It begins in 1861. I have just inherited the throne of the Netherlands. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 401, European Conservatives Against Reform. 1868, Jeremy Harman, the Minister of Education of the Netherlands, officially announced on behalf of the Dutch government that the Netherlands had entered the process of universal compulsory secondary education, and that secondary education was set at 3 years. This move by the Netherlands surprised many people. You should know that the Netherlands only began to promote the popularization of primary education in 1862. Now, in less than 8 years, it has begun to promote the next stage of education. Obviously, the Netherlands seems to have completed primary education by doing this. This is incredible for all countries. You should know that Britain and France required the Netherlands to popularize primary education in their country around 1863, but now it has not yet popularized half of the places. Other countries are even worse. Italy, Spain, Portugal and other countries only started to promote primary education last year. In this case, the Netherlands has actually started the next stage. This is incredible for many countries. Jeremy Harman, the Minister of Education of the Netherlands, declared that after the popularization of primary and secondary education in the Netherlands, the pace of development of higher education in the Netherlands will accelerate, and will therefore make great progress in contributing to social development. In the past 10 years since 1857, the number of colleges and universities has increased, and the enrollment rate of colleges and universities has also increased. The Netherlands has learned and exchanged with various European universities that value academics, established university research institutes, and excelled in academic research. In addition, many colleges funded by the Dutch government quickly trained a large number of specialized talents, providing intellectual support for the development of industry and agriculture. This kind of school focuses more on practicality, uses new educational methods, and trains specialized talents. It is in this way that many poor students go to school, and some private schools have grown up. Therefore, the trend of popularization of universities has appeared earlier in the Netherlands. With the increasing attention and assistance to higher education in various provinces of the Netherlands, the quality of higher education in the Netherlands has been greatly improved. At this time, the educational concepts and practices of the Netherlands have changed and developed. Before William IV crossed in 1857, the education in the Netherlands followed the conservative educational ideas of Europe. In order to adapt to the social status of the Netherlands economy, industrial revolution and urban and rural changes, a new educational theory promoted by William IV has been widely recognized. William IV's new theory eliminated the old education model and encouraged the adoption of scientific education methods for children. William IV thus became the leader of this movement, and this idea also became the core idea of the education system created by him as a future man in this era. William IV naturally would not do it himself, so he chose to launch the Minister of Education, Jeremy Harman. Minister of Education Jeremy Harman was an outstanding figure in progressive thinking in Europe at that time. As a pragmatic educator, he believed that school was a small society and the prototype of today's society. Therefore, children's education should start from practice and adapt to the development of society. As a special environment, schools should continuously socialize children's behavior and thoughts. He advocated that everything should be child-centered, starting from the nature of children, respecting children's personality and promoting children's development. The most important thing is that he prefers to make education meet the needs of society and the development of cities, laying a foundation for children to grow better in a democratic society. The essence of teaching is set according to the characteristics of children themselves. Children can learn from those activities that are truly educational and interesting, thereby improving learning efficiency and achieving self-growth. Therefore, the Minister of Education Jeremy Harman adopted the concept of time learning. With the help of William IV, the Netherlands quickly reformed and abandoned the rote learning model. Jeremy Harman's thought adapted to the needs of social change, criticized traditional European teaching, took the lead in modern teaching, and changed the passive learning and knowledge-centered learning model. As the Minister of Education of the Netherlands, he even opposed the teacher-centered concept, making it easier for students to accept knowledge, accelerating the popularization of knowledge, improving students' learning motivation, eliminating the stiff atmosphere of class, increasing the fun of learning, and making education more adapted to the development of Dutch society and more in line with the needs of the development of Dutch capitalism. However, Jeremy Harman's reforms were not bad in the Netherlands, because under the strong rule of William IV, the Netherlands was relatively calm. However, his reforms were besieged by many conservatives in other European countries, especially in the Southern Catholic region of Southern Europe and the Eastern Orthodox region. These conservatives believed that his educational methods violated the original model because children's cognition was not enough to fully understand what they learned, and the child-centered theory and practice were even more a fantasy. However, despite this, the role played by the educational theory and ideas of Jeremy Harman, the Dutch minister, in the educational reforms in Europe and America was irreplaceable, which caused a heated discussion, especially when his Dutch theory actually achieved fruitful results in the Netherlands. Although his ideas were constantly refuted and criticized, his educational theories and practices provided many rich and constructive inspirations and practices for the education of the Netherlands, leaving an indelible mark in the history of education in the Kingdom of the Netherlands and Europe. At least no one denied that Education Minister Jeremy Harman would be the greatest educator in the Netherlands and one of the most famous people in the history of European education. On June 3, 1868, the Kingdom of Greece and the United Kingdom announced that Princess Louise, the 21-year-old unofficial secretary of Queen Victoria, would be engaged to Frederick, the 18-year-old Crown Prince of the Kingdom of Greece, on September 1, and the wedding would be held on January 10 next year. After the news came out, many countries around the Mediterranean Sea of the two countries changed their faces slightly. The Kingdom of Greece has always been a weak existence in front of the major powers in the Mediterranean, and it is also a buffer zone for major powers. It is precisely because of this that countries will not be overly hostile to Greece in order to prevent Greece from falling to the other side. Moreover, William II is the former king of the Netherlands, and now William IV is his eldest son. In this case, Greece actually chose to move closer to Britain at this time, which made the surrounding countries, the Ottoman Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the Kingdom of Italy, all wonder whether there is any unspeakable secret in it. With the in-depth intelligence provided by various countries, it was learned that the leader of the marriage between the two countries was actually William IV of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Many people were shocked. William IV has never been a peaceful ruler in Europe. Every action he took would cause a wave of public opinion in Europe, and conspiracy theories would arise. However, apart from these politicians, the Rothschild family, the first family in Europe, which was fighting with the largest company in the Netherlands, the Dutch East India Company, was also keeping a close eye on William IV. Because they never underestimated any enemy, not to mention that the enemy at the moment was the most powerful king of the Netherlands in Europe. Chapter 402 The Shaper of Modern Holland, Joint Stock Companies. The marriage between Crown Prince Frederick of the Kingdom of Greece and Princess Louise, the fourth daughter of Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom, has made many people dissatisfied. Not only the governments of various countries, but also Queen Victoria's daughters have different opinions. It is said that Princess Victoria of the United Kingdom, who has been married to the Kingdom of Prussia for many years, is one of those who clearly oppose Princess Louise's marriage to the Kingdom of Greece. Queen Victoria opposes the marriage between Britain and Greece, and there are factors that she is now the Crown Princess of the Kingdom of Prussia. After all, the relationship between the Kingdom of Prussia and the Netherlands is tense, and the royal family of the Kingdom of Greece is of the same lineage as the Dutch royal family, so she is uneasy about increasing the relationship between Britain and the Netherlands. After all, now in Prussia, Prime Minister Bismarck originally opposed Britain and Prussia getting too close, which made her position very embarrassing. Now if Britain marries Prussia's enemy, then she will fall into a more passive position, which is why she opposes it from her own standpoint. However, the eldest son, Crown Prince Edward, also agrees with his sister Queen Victoria's approach. Of course, this is suspected of personal grudges. However, Queen Victoria also has the consideration of balancing the power of Britain and continental Europe. Of course, as an old hand at balancing diplomacy, Britain still knows how to keep a hand everywhere. In fact, the marriage between Britain and Greece has limited impact on the European situation. The choice of Prussian Princess Victoria to obstruct the Anglo-Greek marriage at this time will not have an immediate negative impact on herself, and it is enough to explain to the people of the Kingdom of Prussia. If the marriage between the two countries fails, the key to the problem is that Prussia cannot stop the Anglo-Greek marriage. If the Prussian people have complaints, Crown Princess Victoria will not be included in the list of key care objects. Compared with the relationship between Prussia and the Netherlands, the relationship between Britain and Prussia is more friendly. Britain is Prussia's largest political supporter before and Prussia's largest source of technology. There is no major conflict between the two sides at present. It is just that due to practical considerations, London cannot do too much diplomatic work with Prussia, which has just annexed the entire German Confederation. After the Kingdom of Prussia kicked the Austrian Empire out of the German Confederation and annexed the remaining German Confederation countries, it completely changed the entire European geopolitics. Sweden and Denmark, which have long been neutral countries, have formed a Nordic alliance with the Netherlands for national security considerations. This originally made many people in Prussia feel a sense of crisis. After all, this created huge pressure on Prussia in northern and western Europe. Coupled with the Tsarist Russia in the northeast, the Austro-Hungarian Empire in the southeast, and the French Empire in the south, the establishment of the Nordic alliance undoubtedly filled the last gap in Prussia. And it was in the form of a triple alliance. Precisely because of this, when the news of the marriage between the Crown Prince of the Kingdom of Greece and the British Princess came out, Prussia became even more pessimistic about the relationship between Britain and Prussia, and the Crown Princess Victoria of Prussia was even more high-profile in her opposition. Princess Victoria's opposition was also shared by many pro-Prussians in the UK, but there were also many people who were dissatisfied with Prussia, so the two factions started a tug-of-war, which made the relationship between the Netherlands and Prussia even more tense. There have been comments that Prussia believed that it was getting closer to the Russian Empire, so the Anglo-Prussian relationship had long been in name only as the Russian Empire fell out with Austria. However, this is not the whole truth. Whether it is the Russian Empire or the British Empire, they are all just the objects of extortion by William I of Prussia and Prime Minister Bismarck's diplomatic network through strategic positions. In terms of military operations, it has obviously reached the limit of obstruction in Europe and there is no hope of expansion around. Perhaps Berlin is quietly looking for who will be Berlin's next prey. Bismarck's realistic diplomatic means are of course smart to a certain extent. It has made the most of Prussia's geopolitical advantages. Now it can get along with Britain, Russia and France, and can also use its strength to test its old enemies, the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the French Empire. Perhaps for Prussia, the only risk that prevents it from achieving a higher position in the ranking of major powers is that Prussia will attract the joint containment of the surrounding major powers. Prussia deliberately put forward Princess Victoria to oppose the Anglo-Greek marriage this time. The purpose was to make the relationship between Prussia and the Netherlands tense. The Greek royal family was ruled by William II, the father of King William IV of the Netherlands, and the crown prince was Prince Frederick, the only brother of William IV. Prussia seemed to use the excuse that Europe needed a balance. With the governance of William II, the Netherlands and Greece had already stepped on the right track. The relationship between Greece and the Netherlands was not an alliance, but an alliance by default. Greece was one of the three major allies of the Netherlands in Europe together with Denmark and Sweden. Therefore, the balance statement issued by Berlin was recognized by many countries. Nevertheless, Berlin asked Britain not to marry Greece. If Britain agreed to Prussia's request, it would inevitably cause a major political turmoil in London. Based on the strong pressure at home and abroad, Britain's chances of accepting this condition were small. On the contrary, the British would change their loyalty to the royal family, or at least think that Prussia was interfering in Britain's internal affairs and the royal family. This would cause too much damage to the British government and the royal family. I think Queen Victoria and Prime Minister Disraeli would not agree. The two did not want to bear the stigma of selling out British freedom, nor did they have to deviate too far from the positions of those European countries that were dissatisfied with Prussia. In fact, most European countries were only verbally dissatisfied with the influence of the Netherlands at best, but in reality, they were more concerned about Prussia's huge war potential after annexing the German Confederation. Therefore, they were even happy that the Netherlands, which was at odds with Prussia, could win over more small and medium-sized countries to join the anti-Prussian alliance. Among them, France, Tsarist Russia, and Austria-Hungary were most willing to see this scene. Even in Britain, this faction now has the upper hand. This is also the reason why Queen Victoria made this decision. As for the so-called British discussion, to put it bluntly, it was a benefit of her letting it go, giving her eldest daughter, Princess Victoria, who married Prussia, a face. Britain and Greece do not need to suspend their marriage because of this opposition voice. The Prussian government may also stand up and further clearly oppose the marriage between the two countries. Although the relationship between Prussia and Britain is not bad, Prussia even had a honeymoon period with Britain in the first half of the 19th century, jointly dealing with the Russian Empire and the Austrian Empire to restrain the French Empire. The two countries are now strangers, in fact, more because Prussia, which was supported by Britain, was so strong that Britain was wary of it. Prussia obviously also noticed this, so Prussia naturally feared that Britain would secretly use the European powers to curb Prussia's development. Prussia's road to rise and dream of superpower, in addition to the great powers on the European continent, Britain was a major stumbling block for Bismarck and William I to realize their dreams. In recent years, the relationship between Britain and Prussia has eased on the surface, but there are still many deep-seated disputes. The reason is that they both hope to develop more overseas territories, not to mention Africa. Even in Southeast Asia, Prussia has begun to get involved. It is said that now that Britain has taken over Lower Burma, a lot of Prussian weapons have appeared in the Battle of Upper Burma. Obviously, Prussia provided weapons to Britain's indigenous enemies in the Far East, which made many people in Britain very dissatisfied. Moreover, the two countries have also had conflicts in the Arab Gulf region in the Middle East, although it is not obvious at present. This time, Prussia opposed Princess Victoria, and used this to oppose the Anglo-Greek marriage to test pressure on Britain, demanding that Britain make concessions, and requiring Britain to maintain its usual style while supporting the Netherlands, that is, the offshore balance hand style, and make corresponding compensation to Prussia, at least not to continue to make a fuss about Prussia's annexation of the German Confederation and damage Anglo-Prussian relations. Obviously, Prussia could use this to ease the relationship between Britain and Prussia, so as to focus more on the European countries such as Russia, France, Austria and the Netherlands. Bismarck understood that the relationship between Britain and the Netherlands was by no means inseparable. The two countries had different interests on American affairs and African issues, and there had even been a limited military conflict between the two countries in South Africa. In addition, if Prussia really declined under the suppression of the Netherlands and other countries, Britain's decades-long plan to make Prussia a nail in the middle of the European continent to help Britain keep a close eye on the surrounding areas would have come to nothing. Therefore, Prussia's temporary statement after political calculations was aimed at using its interest influence in Britain's strategic calculations to gain greater benefits. Princess Victoria is just such a most suitable identity. Sure enough, it didn't take long for the British royal family and the British government to state that the Anglo-Greek marriage would not be affected. Britain has its own diplomatic power, and the royal family members also have their own marriage decisions. The British royal family even said, Her Majesty the Queen personally asked Her Royal Highness Princess Louise about her views on this marriage. Her Royal Highness made it clear to the Queen that she did not oppose this marriage, and she was very satisfied with Prince Frederick. Later, in Berlin, after learning the news, Princess Victoria said that she respected Princess Louise and hoped that her future would be happy. The dispute over the Anglo-Greek marriage and Prussia's opposition came to an end, but those in the know knew that the operation behind it actually involved a lot of interest exchanges, but ordinary people didn't know it. On June 10, 1868, the national reform of the Netherlands continued. Following the Dutch Ministry of Education, in order to operate the railways and banks in the Netherlands, the Dutch Parliament passed and the Dutch government launched the creation of a joint stock company. With a charter issued by the governments of the provinces of the Netherlands to form a company, business managers soon realized that they would be able to gather huge capital by selling stocks. In the process of selling stocks, each investor is only responsible for the amount of his investment. This new method of raising funds had actually begun to be explored and applied when the Dutch began to migrate to the Far East. The Dutch East India Company was the earliest ancestor in this regard. This time, the Dutch government directly legislated and became an administrative measure, which enabled the industrial joint stock company to be finalized. Chapter 403 Multinational Corporation. In the past few years of the Dutch migration to the Far East, the Dutch had to feed a huge transport team, construction team, road infrastructure, etc., which created a huge market. Many people have accumulated a lot of capital through the four-person joint stock company by supplying the mobility of long-distance migration and relying on the materials and labor of the Far East construction boom, and have become wealthy people in Dutch society, such as Gates Boden who produces dairy products and groceries, Gustav Swift who produces meat, and Andrew Carew, the Dutch steel king who builds railways. In addition, there is the construction king after who builds houses. John Hillis and Richard Hough, the giants of the maritime transportation industry, are among the first group of people who grew up by eating crabs in the Dutch migration to the Far East Australia. On April 20, 1863, the Dutch House of Representatives and the Senate passed legislation including the migration to the Far East Australian continent. Under the strong request of William IV, Dutch politicians quickly passed legislation in the two houses of the Dutch parliament to support their own faction factories in the absence of opponents. From 1863 to 1867, in order to protect domestic producers and resist the unfavorable competition brought by foreign goods and foreign businessmen, the Dutch Parliament issued the Banking Act, unified and liberalized the monetary system, and established tariff barriers. Many owners in the far east of the Netherlands were allowed to introduce cheap labor from the European continent, with Northern Europe and Eastern Europe being the main directions for the Netherlands. Not only that, the Dutch Parliament donated a large amount of land and mineral resources to transportation companies and railway companies, which began to build railways that crossed the Australian continent and the island of New Guinea from east to west. At the same time, the Dutch Ministry of Transportation also used the cheap construction of indigenous teams to implement a highway strategy in the Netherlands, building flat and wide highways across the country. It is even said that there are hundreds of kilometers of hardened roads in the Far East. It is said that it is for the annual bicycle race in the Netherlands. Whether it is true or not is unknown, but it is said that the European mainland is also building a north-south hardened highway from Amsterdam to The Hague, Rotterdam, which is said to be 18 meters wide, and many people in Europe are watching. In addition to the free land given to the Dutch immigrants and the Far East free land of those companies in recent years, the area is equivalent to the sum of the three Dutch kingdoms. These places are rich in coal, lead, iron and other mineral resources, so the Dutch government and enterprises and the immigrants have formed a very close and undefined relationship, especially the interests of the companies are completely inconsistent with the interests of the Dutch government. Therefore, many private companies at this time do not look so private, and the figures of parliamentarians behind them can be seen everywhere. Their influence on legal regulations is also gradually increasing. On June 11, 1868, the Dutch Ministry of Transportation announced that the areas under the jurisdiction of the Netherlands will be divided into 4 time zones, including the Pacific Ocean, including the Alaska Peninsula, the Dutch East Indies and Australia as the Eastern Time Zone, the entire Indian Ocean as the Central Time Zone, the European and African time zones of the Netherlands, and the Atlantic Time Zone including Guyana in America. Previously, the time zones were chaotic. The time zones of the Far East and mainland Europe were very chaotic, which had an adverse impact on the operations of various companies. The division of 4 time zones changed the Dutch people's timekeeping habits. This new practice of dividing time zones was immediately written into Dutch law in the Netherlands. Subsequently, European countries began to discuss and later adopted it. With the development of the railway industry in the Far East, railways run through every province on the Australian continent, as well as the Dutch East Indies New Guinea Island. Telegraph lines also cover many areas in the Far East, although the density is not as high as that of mainland Europe. The laying of these transportation and communication facilities accelerated the pace of the Far East of the Netherlands in crossing the First Industrial Revolution, and it unexpectedly entered the leading ranks of the world's Second Industrial Revolution together with mainland Europe. Even many of the most advanced research in the Netherlands has been transferred from mainland Europe to the Far East. Many companies' new products are developed and trial-released on the Australian continent, and are sold around the world only after the results are achieved. Among them is Thomas Edison, a newly emerged leader in science and technology in the Netherlands, who became a member of the Royal Netherlands Academy of Sciences at the age of 21 this year by inventing the automatic voting machine and printing press. Edison co-founded the Dutch East India Company, also known as the William Group, in 1867 to specialize in electrical engineering scientific instruments. At the same time, it is said that it is developing synchronous telegraphs and phonographs that are valued by William IV. Whether this is true or not is just a rumor at present. Before 1857, there were few national companies in the Netherlands, except for the Dutch East India Company. However, by 1867, through the use of the new transportation network, many Dutch companies had stepped out of the Dutch mainland in local areas and realized operations throughout the Netherlands. A company can obtain raw materials from the Far East Pacific Islands, and then complete the processing and production in Sydney or Melbourne on the Australian mainland, or in Jakarta or Surabaya in the Dutch East Indies. The products can be sold locally or brought back to Europe as a window to the entire European continent. It can be said that the product sales are oriented to the whole of the Netherlands. Moreover, Dutch giant companies began to emerge one after another. They have basically controlled the production and sales of goods, and have had an increasingly profound impact on Dutch society. Many villages in the Netherlands were originally small societies isolated from the outside world. The extension and promotion of railways and roads broke this isolation, making these Dutch villages gradually become a more complete and more single organic part of the Netherlands. In order to avoid being defeated, those small local companies can only choose to imitate giant companies or merge with them. The electric company jointly established by the Dutch East India Company and Edison is a model. One has funds, resources and sales channels, and the other has technology. They hit it off and everyone is happy. Not only the technology industry, but also the Dutch oil, steel, construction, food industry and even agricultural industry have been impacted by this huge change. Some people even joke that even the soap manufacturing industry in the Netherlands has been hit hard. In short, the emergence of the Dutch Joint Stock Company has greatly accelerated the development of various industries in the Netherlands. Many domestic companies in the Netherlands have grown rapidly during this period, and their popularity has greatly increased. Their products are even exported to Europe, America and Asia. For example, the technological products of the head Edison United Electric Company and the tobacco products of the Netherlands mentioned earlier have been exported overseas, becoming one of the important well-known multinational companies in the Netherlands. Chapter 404, Europe and America follow the trend. 1868, the Parliament of the Kingdom of Belgium took the lead in passing two bills. Following the Netherlands, it passed a new education law, confirming that Belgium would also implement compulsory secondary education. At the same time, it passed the Belgian Company Share Act, which caused a stir in Europe. Originally, everyone chose to wait and see the effect of the Dutch reform before starting the next step, but Belgium's move undoubtedly ignited the fuse, like an exploding bomb, attacking the entire Europe and the United States. Then on June 20, 1868, Denmark, Sweden, and Greece joined the ranks. Obviously, these countries, regardless of economic scale and population patterns, all agreed that their countries should keep up with the Netherlands, which is of the same size and has advanced science. This saved a lot of the Netherlands' diplomatic resources. For nothing, it increased the international influence. On June 25, Argentina, Ecuador, Colombia, Venezuela, and Peru, which are pro-Dutch in South America, chose to promote primary education in their countries according to their national conditions, intending to narrow the educational gap with the Netherlands. Along with them, there was also the Tsarist Russian Empire, a major European country. At that time, the Tsarist Russian Empire had just ended the serfdom system a few years ago. Primary education undoubtedly gave Alexander II the opportunity to find a turning point in his relationship with the local nobles, who were dissatisfied with the abolition of serfdom. After all, qualified labor was important to the nobles and capitalists of the Tsarist Russian Empire. The benefits brought by serfdom were not small, so primary education was passed by the country's parliament on the same day. This made it the fifth country to implement primary education among the six major European countries: the British Empire, the French Empire, the Tsarist Russian Empire, the Kingdom of Prussia, the Kingdom of Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire. With the joining of the Tsarist Russian Empire, primary education became a constitution. At present, except for the Ottoman Empire, all the other six major countries have joined the education bill initiated by the Netherlands. Invisibly, the influence of the Netherlands on the international has increased in many people in the world. It seems that as long as the policies introduced by the Netherlands are basically followed by other countries in the world, or joined in, this makes many international politicians secretly praise the international status of the Netherlands, which seems to be no less than that of the six major countries, and even surpasses the international influence of the Ottoman Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire and even the Russian Empire. It is enough to enter the top 5 most influential countries in the world. On June 30, 1868, on this last day, in the United States across the Atlantic, the House of Representatives of the United States Congress, after the trend in Belgium for half a month, the Secondary Education Act and the Limited Liability Company Stock System Act were also passed one after another. As long as they are approved by the Senate on July 5, 5 days later, they can be sent to President Andrew Johnson to form the National Implementation Law of the United States. The executive department and private enterprises will communicate in accordance with the law. Many people originally thought that the Democratic Party's third-ranked figure, Senator Whip Thomas Hendricks, would obstruct it. After all, a few days ago, he criticized the influence of the Dutch and Dutch multinational companies in the United States. But unexpectedly, he chose to be quiet this time. Many people even noticed that he actually voted in favor of both cases. This is puzzling. Of course, if you are familiar with it, you will understand what he and his people behind the scenes are planning. Paris, France, damn it, the Netherlands actually came up with such a move. In this way, countries seem to have begun to support their small domestic companies to merge into large companies, and slowly the rope is transformed into a large international company. Father, the Netherlands is playing such a hand, it's really too smooth. Although Edmund Rothschild was very angry that the Netherlands launched the limited liability company at this time, which shocked him, but the negative impact on the Rothschild family will have a significant impact. Yes, the Rothschild family relies on cross-regional and cross-border liquidity to maintain our position in various countries. However, the introduction of the shareholding system in the Netherlands has immediately led to the merger of companies in various countries, and even the merger of small companies with their own capital. This has undoubtedly put the Rothschild family's transnational monopoly in danger. The move by the Dutch government is fast, fierce and accurate, and it really focuses on the weak points of our Rothschild family. Although James Rothschild sighed like this, he continued to maintain his gentlemanly demeanor on his face. Father, this time the Morgan family didn't say a word and chose to remain silent. What does the Morgan family mean by this? The company's shares are also a good thing for the Morgan family, and the Morgan family will naturally not become a stumbling block to their own growth. My son, you know, no capitalist will be a stumbling block to prevent himself from making a lot of money, not to mention the American legislation that can better control the fate of his family. Edmund was stunned when he heard it, and then he suddenly realized, yes, although the Morgan family is the Rothschild family, the Lincoln government strongly dislikes their hegemony in the American financial industry, and single-handedly supports the Morgan family and Kuhn Lab Company in the financial industry. One of the theories about the alliance between the Morgan family and the Rothschild family is that in 1865, the United States of America almost exhausted all its gold due to the Civil War. In the end, the American government issued a new currency and gave Morgan the right to issue American Treasury bonds for 30 years in exchange for 3.5 million ounces of gold to restore the government's surplus. Many people actually understand that the source of the Morgan family's gold came from the Rothschild family. So in general, the Morgan family is not actually a subsidiary of our Rothschild family, but more like an ally that uses each other. His opponent is the Randy family from the Dutch-American Federation. As long as we grasp the idea, we can do more work on the Morgan family, said James Rothschild. Edmund Rothschild, father, now that the Randy family and the Morgan family have clashed in finance, should we ask the Mellon family to get involved as well? The Mellon family is also a newly emerging family in the United States. Like the Morgan family, they have a British background. However, the Mellon family is even more low-key than the Morgan family. Even many people in the United States have heard of the Randy family and the Morgan family, but have never heard of the Mellon family, the third largest financial family. James Rothschild shook his head. That guy is more difficult to deal with and more unpredictable. I can only warn you that Thomas Mellon is a very scheming person. This person is not even worse than John Morgan of the Morgan family. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 405 Morgan and Rockefeller supported by Bosch. The Morgan family seems to be neutral at present, but in fact, their position is inclined towards the Rothschild family. This is why we have to guard against John Morgan's desperate actions. Thomas Mellon of the Mellon family is not a good person either. The more low-key he is, the more he can prove that he has great ambitions. I don't want us to end up being dowries for others. Yes, the internal situation of the United States Federation is full of holes at present. There are strong forces from various countries there. The Dutch seem to have the upper hand at present, but if they are not vigilant, these families and the forces they may have connections with behind them will cause the Netherlands to suffer a great loss. Amsterdam, the Netherlands. Randy Alton, general manager of the Dutch East India Company, and Thorbecke, the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, spoke one after another. As the most important right-hand men of William IV at present, the two explained their views on their positions to William IV from the perspective of official and private enterprises. This is very constructive for William IV, and it is also a way for William IV to increase his comprehensive views in all aspects. After all, a person's intelligence is limited. Gathering the intelligence of others for one's own use is what a team leader should do, rather than implementing a lone wolf policy. Napoleon III's diplomacy is a living example of the failure of the lone wolf policy. In 1861, as the American Civil War progressed, a serious financial crisis occurred in the United States. At that time, the new currency had not yet been issued. In order to cope with the deteriorating institutional economy and the cost of delivering weapons, the federal government strongly opposed the Rothschild family's involvement in the American currency and the right to issue treasury bonds. Therefore, the Lincoln government decided to issue $400 million in public bonds. The Morgan family took this opportunity to obtain the issuance of $100 million in U.S. Treasury bonds with the secret support of the Rothschild family. Another $250 million fell into the hands of the Randi family, and the Mellon family won the right to issue $50 million in Treasury bonds. John Morgan did not rush to issue the bonds blindly, but made some preparations first. He frequently showed up on various occasions and expressed his views on the economic development trend and changes in the war situation in the United States of America, in order to let the public understand the benefits of buying treasury bonds through the press. At the same time, when this guy estimated that the conditions were almost ripe, John Morgan took action, running around the states, launching AI nationalism and calling on everyone in the United States of America to contribute to the fate of the nation and the country. This time, under the operation of John Morgan, the Morgan family completed the issuance of $100 million in treasury bonds. At the same time, Morgan not only made huge profits, but also became a hero who saved the economy of the United States of America at that time, just like the Randi family and the Mellon family. This established the Morgan family's status as a financial family in the United States of America. At that time, Morgan Bank and Mellon Bank greatly increased their shares in various states. Although it has not threatened the Randi Bank under the Randi family for several years, in terms of business, it has reached the same scale as the Boston Consortium, threatening Citibank's position as the second largest bank in the United States of America. This is something that we have to guard against. After all, these two families were the behemoths that ruled the United States for nearly 150 years in their previous lives. Even in the 21st century, they were still very successful, and their influence was far beyond what it is now. Thinking of this, William IV had a general impression in his mind, that is, it seemed that the Morgan family used financial treasury bonds and monetary rights to gradually derive various financial products, and then expanded to the financial discourse power, gradually becoming the most powerful financial family that dominated the United States and even the world. Compared with the Rothschild family, the Morgan family may not be so prominent and famous. In the second half of the 20th century, after World War II, the Morgan family fell out with the Rothschild family in the United States and parted ways. Together with the Rockefeller family, another trader secretly supported by the like-minded Rothschild family, they gradually supported the finance and industry of the United States. Even during this period, people joke that the Democratic Party belongs to the Morgan family, the Republican Party belongs to the Rockefeller family, and other families can only follow them and eat soup behind them. Before World War II, there was another saying that Rockefeller and Morgan belonged to the Rothschild family. From this, we can imagine how huge the financial power of the Rothschild family is. From Randy Alton and Thorbecke's vigilance against the Rothschild family, we know how much pressure the family puts on them. With the early layout, the current layout of the Rothschild family in the United States of America has been destroyed by me. William IV continued, at present, it is difficult for the Rothschild family to settle directly in the United States of America. They can only rely on the Morgan family and other forces they support. In order to develop, these families will naturally not give up the Rothschilds' investment. But don't forget, this is just a stopgap measure. When a child grows up, he will not be under the control of his mother, not to mention the families that use each other. I don't believe that the Morgan family and the Rothschild family will always maintain such a friendly relationship. Thorbecke and Randy Orton's heart moved, and the two looked at each other. They were both smart people. They immediately understood that William IV was reminding them that the Morgan family could be won over. Randy Alton said worriedly, "The Randy family and the Morgan family are both financial competitors of the United States. I am afraid that Morgan's ambition will encourage them to be unwilling to cooperate with us. Isn't there also the Mellon family?" William IV smiled faintly. "Although the British are proud, they have never been a nation that is unwilling to be inferior to others. Don't forget that the British Empire is now the most powerful country in the world. Although there is Lionel Rothschild in London, don't forget that there are also Buckingham Palace and 10 Downing Street." Randy Alton was stunned at first, then he came to his senses and looked at William IV in disbelief. Facing his doubts, William IV pursed his lips at the Dutch Prime Minister Thorbecke next to him. The latter whispered quietly in Randy Alton's ear. Randy Alton was shocked after hearing it. This plan was so huge that even Randy Alton, who was very shrewd, was completely shocked. "If your Majesty's plan succeeds, the world situation will either enter a turbulent period or reach an unprecedented state of prosperity. But no matter what, it will be the best destination for the Netherlands, but for other countries, it is not that simple." Randy Alton's old face showed a spirited look, and said, "Although I am over 80 years old, Your Majesty's plan has brought me back to the feeling of starting my struggle at the age of 18. Chapter 406, The British Empire against Russia. Although there are always victorious generals in the world, there has never been an empire that has never been defeated. The world's countries are divided into global superpowers, regional powers, medium powers and small countries. There are even many city-states in Europe. Each country covets its own status, but often, the final result is like a passing cloud in smoke, falling apart. At present, the situation in Europe is stable, especially after the Kingdom of Prussia annexed the German Confederation, and the surrounding countries became wary of it. On June 25, 1868, when the Netherlands was planning to build America, an unexpected news came, and some people were happy and some were worried. It turned out that as early as a month ago, the Ottoman Empire sent a delegation to visit St. Petersburg. After many rounds of discussions, the two countries finally agreed to a ceasefire between the two countries. The eastern border between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea was determined to be the Greater Caucasus Mountains. In fact, the Ottoman Empire was equivalent to evacuating to the south and making concessions to the Tsarist Russian Empire. In the west, the Russian Empire originally occupied the northern part of Bulgaria. After the Ottoman Empire expressed its firmness and unwillingness to retreat in St. Petersburg, the Ottoman Empire finally expressed its position in exchange for the northern territory of the Greater Caucasus Mountains in the east. The Russian Empire finally agreed to withdraw from the northern territory occupied by Bulgaria, and the Ottoman Empire recognized the Russian Empire's position in Romania. So far, the two countries have secretly completed the peace talks, and it was not until the results came out that the surrounding people knew that the confidentiality agreement was done too well. So much so that the British Empire, the largest stakeholder, stood up to oppose the agreement at the first time. I don't know why Constantinople signed such an agreement with St. Petersburg without the participation of our British Empire, but I have one thing to declare in advance. The British government will not easily give up our vested interests, let alone our principles. I hope that the interests of the British Empire should not be harmed by all parties, especially without the knowledge of the British Empire. British Foreign Secretary Russell solemnly issued Britain's views in London. From the literal meaning, it is obvious that this veteran British diplomatic helmsman is obviously dissatisfied. Many people shook their heads secretly. The Russian Empire has always been considered Britain's #1 balancing country, and this has been the case for dozens or hundreds of years. Although the Ottoman Empire is not weak at present, it has always been exaggerating the threat of the Russian Empire. Therefore, it has bound the Ottoman Empire in southeastern Europe to help Britain guard the passage to the south of the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Russian Empire. Especially the latter, Britain is strictly guarding against this. Austria-Hungary is currently suppressed by Prussia and cannot move, while the Russian Empire has no such means of containment. Therefore, the status of the Ottoman Empire is very special. Even in recent years, Britain has paid a lot of prices to win over the Ottoman Empire. The supply of guns alone exceeds 200,000 pairs of guns, ammunition, and ammunition. At this time, the Ottoman Empire actually secretly dated the Russian Empire behind Britain's back, but the problem was that it had a love effect, which was unacceptable to Britain. So it immediately put pressure on the Ottoman Empire, intending to make the Ottoman Empire back down on this issue. However, No one would rashly think that the Ottoman Empire would fulfill Britain for this. As expected, soon after, Constantinople stood up and accused Britain of being wrong. The Ottoman Empire was a great power. There was no such thing as engaging in diplomacy behind someone's back. They were sovereign states and had the mission to improve the environment around the Ottoman Empire to develop the economy, rather than become the source of crisis. We thank Britain for its help over the years and sincerely hope that the two countries can continue the previous relationship. But we hope that Britain can also speak and do things that are in the interests of our country in this atmosphere. Of course, our agreement with the Russian Empire obviously does not mean to harm our ally Britain. It really does not. Following Constantinople, St. Petersburg also made a straightforward rebuttal to the words of British Foreign Secretary Russell. And because the relationship between the two countries is not very friendly, the attitude of the Russian Empire is not as friendly as Constantinople. The British Empire is the most domineering country in the world. It seems that it wants all countries in the world to become its slaves just through its warships at sea. What we don't understand is where Britain's confidence comes from. Although they have suffered a lot of defeats in many places recently, their style remains the same. Not to mention that they still interfere in the politics of other countries. They even conduct so-called negotiations on the independent foreign policies of various countries. What a grand attitude. What makes us dissatisfied is that the object of Britain's negotiations this time is the Russian Empire. We do not agree with Britain's point of view, especially the accusations in front of the two powerful countries, the Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire, are not worth mentioning. The attitude of the Russian Empire made the British Empire angry, but it could not complain to the Russian Empire. A strong navy and a strong land power, and half of the territories bordering the United States. More than half of the coastal areas are along the Arctic coast. No matter how powerful the British warships are, it is difficult to disrupt the Russian Empire there. Moreover, don't forget that although the Russian Empire's navy is currently one place behind, it has been squeezed to the fourth place after Britain, France, and the Netherlands by William IV's inside information that the Far East Navy is not inferior to the mainland. However, it is less than 3/5 of Britain. But Britain is not willing to fight a head-on naval war in the Arctic Ocean with the Russian Empire. In that case, Britain's position as an international super-navy empire may be removed. If the Netherlands, France and other countries that are eyeing it will take the opportunity to rise, it will be even more unprofitable. Therefore, in the end, Britain just summoned the head of the Russian Empire's embassy in the UK in London for negotiations, and the matter was left unresolved. In response, William IV smiled. This is the confidence of a great power with a large population and broad depth. Britain could not do anything to the Russian Empire. In fact, Britain has never been able to do anything to Russia. Both countries began to rise slowly in the 17th century, and both completed the transformation into medium-sized countries or even great powers within 100 years in the 18th century. In the 19th century, the two countries became a maritime superpower and a land superpower after expansion. The two countries have been in a tug-of-war from non-interference in the past to mutual vigilance now. Even in the 21st century, Britain is almost the most disgusted with Russia. Britain almost always opposes Russia, and is the one who walks in the forefront. Chapter 407, The Austro-Hungarian Empire is nervous. As for the Ottoman Empire, as long as it does not deviate from the British Empire's Middle East strategy of not allowing the Russian Empire to move south in the Middle East, and gets too close to the Russian Empire on the issue of the Russian Empire, the British Empire can only turn a blind eye to the Ottoman Empire. Who made the Ottoman Empire the most important anti-Russian chess piece of the British Empire? Speaking of this, William IV couldn't help but think of the Kingdom of Italy, which was interspersed between Britain and France in the previous period. It was not only a manifestation of the autonomy of a great power, but the Ottoman Empire might have seen it. So it also grasped the pain points of Britain's strategy in the Mediterranean and the Middle East and strangled the lifeline of the British Empire since it used the Ottoman Empire to oppose the Russian Empire's influence in Southeast Europe and the Middle East. The Russian Empire's position on the Ottoman Empire was turned a blind eye. The Ottoman Empire's diplomatic confidence also lies in strangling the lifeline of the West, especially the British Empire, which regarded the Ottoman Empire as a weapon to balance the Russian Empire and the Austro-Hungarian Empire in the Balkan Peninsula. The British strategy in the Victorian era of the British Empire was already very clear. This was not only clear to William IV, but also to all other countries. The British Empire wanted to control the entrances and exits of various oceans in order to complete the roaming of its warships in various oceans, and at the same time wanted to stop other countries from following their footsteps and embarking on the road of naval superpower. The super strength of the Russian Empire's army has become an object of fear for Britain, and the size of the Fourth Navy is enough to make Britain worry. Moreover, the Russian Empire spans the central and northern parts of the Eurasian continent. If the Russian Empire has an enclave entrance in the Indian Ocean, it will be the most disadvantageous to Britain, even if there is a seaport base in the Mediterranean that connects to the European mainland. At present, although the Ottoman Empire belongs to the Turkic Turks and does not belong to the same race as Britain, Britain regards the Russian Empire as its most important opponent. Therefore, the British Empire designed two geopolitical frameworks for the Russian Empire in the Middle East strategy. One is the Ottoman Empire, and the other is the Austro-Hungarian Empire and Italy. The latter maintains the Mediterranean, and the former maintains the Indian Ocean while also having the Mediterranean. Therefore, the Ottoman Empire is more important to the British Empire than Italy, not to mention the role of the Ottoman Empire in helping Britain to strictly guard the Suez Canal and the Red Sea. As a major consumer system of Britain's global layout to collect energy resources, based on the consideration of security diversification, Britain supports the Ottoman Empire. This is a fact that cannot be changed in the short and medium term. Based on the consideration of security diversification, the Ottoman Empire can be regarded as seeing Britain's dependence on itself, and the Ottoman Empire cannot completely rely on Britain for its own security. It is said that many high-level officials in Istanbul are very envious of the Netherlands' international vertical and horizontal. They have always been arrogant. Seeing the rapid rise in status and strength of the Netherlands, they are naturally unwilling to lag behind, so they have the idea of breaking the previous reliance on Britain to balance diplomacy. One lie needs another 100 lies to make up for it, and often the implementation of a country's foreign policy also requires different auxiliary diplomatic measures to support its implementation. After signing an armistice and peace agreement with the Russian Empire, the Ottoman Empire has been shuttling between European countries, and the countries naturally accept the goodwill of Constantinople. This round of diplomacy did not stop until July 10, 1868, when the Ottoman Empire announced that it had applied to join the International Court of Justice in The Hague, which was led by the Netherlands. This was the first time in history that a major country took the initiative to apply to join an organization of small and medium-sized countries. This news instantly shocked Europe and the United States. People seemed to realize at this time that the International Court of Justice in The Hague, which was originally thought to be just a club of small and medium-sized countries, seemed to have new vitality at this moment, and it seemed that its influence had just begun. Reporters from newspapers from various countries gathered in The Hague. It is said that because of the presence of the headquarters of these international organizations, The Hague has become one of the top 10 cities with the highest exposure in the world in recent years, second only to London, Paris, Rome, Berlin, Vienna, Amsterdam, St. Petersburg, Washington, and Constantinople, surpassing the capitals of many other countries. Ross, President of the International Court of Justice in The Hague and Minister of Justice of the Netherlands, confirmed to newspapers from various countries that the head of the Ottoman Empire's embassy in the Netherlands had indeed submitted an application and was currently under re-evaluation. He also said that in a month, all member states will vote, and as long as the Ottoman Empire can get 2/3 of the members to vote in favor, then the Ottoman Empire will become a new member of the organization. He hinted that the Ottoman Empire is currently conducting diplomatic contacts in various member states. When asked what the Netherlands' attitude towards the Ottoman Empire joining the organization was, as he should be very sensitive to news as the Minister of Justice of the Netherlands, Ross said that the Netherlands is an open-minded country. The Netherlands will not prevent other countries from joining the organization created by the Netherlands, nor will it exclude them. We welcome any country to join. The Netherlands has clearly stated that it does not oppose the Ottoman Empire joining the organization. What should we do? Austria-Hungary, Vienna. Since the Ottoman Empire has applied to join, we will naturally not lag behind other countries. Therefore, we in the Austro-Hungarian Empire are preparing our information and are preparing to apply to join the organization at the same time. Of course, as the Dutch Minister of Justice Ross said, everything will be decided in order of priority. Therefore, we are quietly watching the details of the process of the Ottoman Empire joining the organization. After all, we are very optimistic about the significance that any organization can bring to everyone. After all, There is a need for their existence. Austro-Hungarian Foreign Minister Bismarck made the above statement when he was asked by the newspaper after consulting the Austro-Hungarian Parliament on foreign policy in Vienna. From this statement, the Austro-Hungarian Empire has obviously loosened its stance. Obviously, the joining of its southeastern neighbor the Ottoman Empire has brought it a certain amount of pressure. The relationship with Italy in the south was not good. Prussia in the west was a powerful rival that could ignore the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the Russian Empire in the east maintained relations with Britain because of the death of Nicholas I, which made his successor, King Alexander II, have a very low favorability towards Austria-Hungary. It seemed that he got inspiration from the relationship between the Ottoman Empire and Britain. Therefore, this made the Austro-Hungarian Empire choose to make a move. It wanted to go back to the policy of vertical and horizontal alliances at that time of Metternich. Among them, this time Bismarck wanted to join the International Court of Justice in The Hague as an opportunity to open up relations with other countries. This can be seen from his recent frequent contacts with Constantinople. It seems that the Austro-Hungarian Empire wants to further ease relations with the Ottoman Empire and intends to focus its energy on the north and Italy. Chapter 408, A Good Move. The Ottoman Empire relied heavily on British weapons. The geographical location of the Ottoman Empire meant that it would become a place of war on four sides, and the scope of defense was vast. As a country with a huge demand for weapons, based on the diversification of security elements, the Ottoman Empire could not cut off its arms trade with Britain. The Ottoman Empire imported weapons from Britain, not only because it had been using British weapons for a long time, but also because it was unwilling to offend Britain. Although Britain's attitude towards the Ottoman Empire was to exert strong pressure, Britain also needed the Ottoman Empire for many reasons, even more than the Ottoman Empire needed Britain. In fact, seriously speaking, in the whole of Europe, except for the Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire, other countries actually maintained good communication with the Ottoman Empire. Obviously, the Ottoman Empire, which was on the edge of Europe, was not as urgent a threat to European countries as the Russian Empire, which was eager to expand. Moreover, even in the hearts of various countries, they more or less agreed with Britain's approach, to prevent the Russian Empire from going south to the Indian Ocean and the Mediterranean, and to prevent the Russian Empire from rising at sea after becoming a land superpower. Where did the Ottoman Empire get its confidence? Interests are the primary consideration. The Ottoman Empire's military equipment mainly comes from the British Empire, so national security is inseparable from the British Empire. Under this situation, if the Ottoman Empire completely turns its face against Britain, condemns and completely befriends the Russian Empire, it is equivalent to destroying the Great Wall. After all, it can no longer obtain advanced British weapons and equipment, and looking at the surrounding areas of the Ottoman Empire, the British Mediterranean fleet on Crete and the British in Egypt at the Suez Canal will not easily let go of threats to the Ottoman Empire, not to mention that the sub-Indian continent in the east has fallen into the hands of Britain, and the British army there is said to be strong. Therefore, it is easy for the Ottoman Empire to be tough on Britain's independence, but it will hurt the foundation of the Ottoman Empire's national defense. Shaking the foundation of national security, based on the security foundation of the Ottoman Empire and based on its own security considerations, the Ottoman Empire will naturally not seriously anger Britain, or even turn against it. The Ottoman Empire, which was regarded as a strategic partner of the United Kingdom and other Western European countries and had the strategic significance of jointly curbing the southward expansion of the Russian Empire, maintained its traditional relationship with the United Kingdom and continued to have frequent diplomatic exchanges with Western European countries. This was the best strategy for the Ottoman Empire at present. At the same time, proper improvement of relations with the Russian Empire would give the Ottoman Empire room for maneuver and not just hang on the big tree of Britain. Recently, the British Foreign Secretary Russell, the French Foreign Secretary Edmond Lou and the Austro-Hungarian Foreign Secretary Bismarck, who visited the Ottoman Empire, have shown that these countries are willing to continue to interact with the Ottoman Empire to stabilize relations. Even Napoleon III and William I wrote personal letters to Abdulaziz I Sultan, expressing their attitude of maintaining friendship with the Ottoman Empire. Interestingly, even though many countries bombarded, persuaded and threatened the Ottoman Empire and the Russian Empire to sign a contract to end the war, Abdulaziz I Sultan fought back. It must be said that the king of the Ottoman Empire was very good at foreign command, which caused headaches for Britain and many Western European countries. It seems that in this Russo-Austrian war, The Ottoman Empire seems to have lost its brightness and become the biggest loser in this war crisis. But if this diplomacy is successful, perhaps the Ottoman Empire will indeed get rid of its isolation from the decision-making circle of European powers and become a real European power. At the same time, because the French Empire invaded the Siamese Empire, among the small and medium-sized countries in the world, a united anti-Russian front similar to the previous Crimean War was formed, and systematic sanctions were imposed on the Russian Empire, and dissatisfaction with France was also launched in many countries. At this level, it is definitely not a good idea for the Ottoman Empire to fight to the death with the Russian Empire. This is obviously the best time to withdraw. It is precisely because of this idea that the Ottoman Empire will resist the pressure from Britain at this time, always maintain a steady position in negotiations, insist on negotiating with the Russian Empire, and never relax. At the same time, it will use international doubts to test the Russian Empire and increase the advantage between them and the Russian Empire in the negotiations. On July 5, 1868, the world-renowned current affairs commentator Herman van Perron published his views on the latest negotiations between the Ottoman Empire and the Russian Empire and the signing of a contract to end the war in the European Times. As the most popular current affairs expert in the world, Van Perron's comments are reprinted and published in newspapers of various countries. It can be seen that his social influence in the world has reached the level of top experts. Many people even assert that many kings of various countries may not be as good as him in terms of global influence, because his articles have too many audiences. From national kings, cabinet members and governments at all levels of various countries, ordinary people and even students and civil groups. Many of these people found in Herman van Perron's views a neutrality that other experts did not have, which made them naturally choose to trust Herman van Perron. At least for now, Herman van Perron will not speak about the world from the perspective of the Dutch government just because he is Dutch. This is also the reason why people from all countries trust him. Abdulaziz I and Queen Victoria could not reach a consensus, but it did not prevent the two countries from writing. In order to help the Ottoman Empire, Britain's largest ally in the Middle East, reach a more resolute pro-British policy, Britain had given the Ottoman Empire a considerable amount of assistance in the past. I believe that after this time, Britain may increase its support for the Ottoman Empire. In that case, the Ottoman Empire will still gain a lot in Britain. In addition to Britain, the Ottoman Empire is said to send a senior team to visit Paris and Berlin, Vienna, Amsterdam, Madrid, Lisbon, Rome, Milan, etc., almost covering the capitals of European countries. Finally, it will use this whirlwind to sign a contract with Alexander II of the Russian Empire in person. The location seems to be chosen in The Hague. Obviously, the Ottoman Empire wants the International Court of Justice in The Hague to test the Russian Empire and gather the last European forces to make Alexander II feel the pressure of the Ottoman Empire. At the same time, I might as well guess that the Ottoman Empire is testing the International Court of Justice in The Hague, and in the form of gifts, it asks the organization to release the Ottoman Empire into the organization's review procedures. Here, I have to say that the Ottoman Empire made a good move. Britain could not get a firm commitment from the Ottoman Empire to Russia. The Russian Empire also needed to make real concessions to the Ottoman Empire. Perhaps, other Western European countries would also find it difficult to achieve their goals. Chapter 409, What is Spain planning? However, the Ottoman Empire's calculations are still uncertain. The main topic of the Ottoman Empire's diplomatic trip to Europe not long ago was to explain to various countries the current position of the Ottoman Empire after the Russo-Austrian War. This time, the Ottoman Empire played the role of a victim and gained a lot. Initially, British Prime Minister Disraeli even sent a telegram asking Abdulaziz I to be tougher on the Russian Empire, but Abdulaziz I used the standard answer in a way that remained unchanged in the face of all changes: the war weariness in the Ottoman Empire and the weakening of the Ottoman Empire's national strength, unable to fight the Russian Empire alone. The Ottoman Empire even directly stated that marches demanding a ceasefire between Austria and Russia had begun to appear in their country. It also mentioned that there are no winners in war, everyone is a loser, and the Ottoman Empire itself advocates peace. Britain was naturally dissatisfied with this answer. If it put pressure on the Ottoman Empire, it would not get the response it hoped to see, and Britain would be even more unhappy, but it could do nothing about it. In fact, London and the UK also knows that maintaining the superficial unity between the two countries can create geopolitical pressure on the Russian Empire. Because of this, The Ottoman Empire has been particularly important in the UK's Middle East strategic weight for decades. The Ottoman Empire is now clearly well aware of the British Empire's calculations in the Middle East and even the entire Mediterranean Middle East Indian Ocean strategy at this stage. It is absolutely inseparable from the Ottoman Empire, the biggest chess piece against Russia. As long as the Ottoman Empire does not deviate from the British strategy of restricting the southward expansion of the Russian Empire, disobeys Britain on the issue of anti-Russian empire, and even takes an extreme approach for the sake of interests, the British Empire can only give the Ottoman Empire a break. Who made the Ottoman Empire the most important chess piece against Russia in the UK? This is the case with the UK. Ambitious countries such as the French Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the Kingdom of Prussia did not dare to use force against the Ottoman Empire, and even mainly used appeasement. Prussian Kingdom, Berlin. Looking at the whole article, Bismarck's face showed an unprecedented solemnity. This Hermann van Peron's writing is too sharp. He analyzed the countries so thoroughly that it seemed that the purpose of each country could not be traced. Such a person who has such an accurate grasp of the world situation is just a Dutch current affairs commentator? Bismarck would never believe this. His intelligence is always accurate, and he is the kind that knows the secrets. So there must be an intelligence team behind him to enable him to obtain enough intelligence to support his point of view. At the same time, he seems to have set the views of various countries to the attitudes of various countries, making them want to refute, but because of their own positions, they are not easy to speak, otherwise they will fall into the contradiction between the refutation and their own positions, and enter a situation that is difficult to justify. Wow! It's amazing. It must be said that Bismarck's judgment of people is still very accurate. Hermann van Peron was almost dissected and analyzed by him. How is the investigation of this European Times in Luxembourg? Bismarck never believed in the so-called neutrality, because the so-called neutrality can only be said to be a choice of retreating in self-protection because of a lack of strength for the time being. Luxembourg is a principality under the jurisdiction of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Although it used to belong to the German Confederation, as Prussia annexed the territories of several city-states other than the Duchy of Nassau and the Duchy of Luxembourg, this principality has become more and more integrated with the Netherlands. Although Bismarck was a little unhappy, it must be said that the current status of the Netherlands is too special, which makes him a little cautious. If it were only the strength on the European side, Prussia could definitely say with confidence that it would take them down, perhaps in a few months, provided that other countries did not intervene. The establishment of the Second Netherlands in the Far East and other places, yes, in the eyes of Bismarck and other European managers at all levels, the Netherlands is building a second nest for itself, which makes Bismarck very upset. If the Netherlands is attacked like Denmark, and it fails to be defeated in one blow, what Prussia will face will be a very passive situation. Don't forget that the Netherlands and Prussia's overseas colonies in Africa is currently the strongest country, except for Britain and the French Empire, and is even far above Prussia. If the Netherlands is invaded by Prussia, then the Prussian colonies in Africa are likely to be dragged into the war, and the probability of loss is very high. Don't forget that Prussia has no advantage over the Dutch Navy. Even the warships built in several shipyards are still helped by Dutch engineers. The Dutch fleet in the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean seems to be second only to the size of the British fleet there. In this case, the Netherlands has completely retained its super ability to counterattack Prussia twice. In addition, more than 60% of the 10 million Dutch people have moved to the Far East. It will definitely not be easy to face the counterattack capability to surpass the mainland and become Prussia. It is also said that the Dutch are training a number of Far Eastern and African native troops there, which is at the level of 100,000. This is not a small project. You should know that the French Empire, as the second largest army in Europe, usually maintains a military force of about 500,000. The Netherlands itself has a conventional army of about 150,000. Now with the addition of these 100,000 indigenous troops, although there may be many incomplete, it is enough to make people dare not act rashly. The Netherlands uses opportunistic strategies to maximize its national interests. The uncertainty it shows is likely to affect the current strategic pattern in Europe and even the world. Bismarck's originally majestic face showed a headache. For Prussia, it may be more harmful than beneficial, but if Prussia tries to break this model of the Netherlands, it seems to be a bit of a fire. At present, small and medium-sized countries are learning Dutch diplomatic skills and are no longer loyal to the traditional diplomatic strategy. It seems that many medium-sized countries have interrupted the practice of relying entirely on a big country. This is the case with Italy, and now the Ottoman Empire is also the case. It seems that the big powers will have a headache in the future, because the little brothers are not honest anymore. Madrid, Spain. Unlike William IV's Kingdom of the Netherlands, which established various organizations everywhere, the wave of diplomatic balance caused by Italy and the Ottoman Empire will sweep all countries in Europe. I think before long, the big powers will find that their reliable allies seem to have become strangers. Queen Isabella II said sarcastically, "The French Empire is the best target at the moment." Isabella II's ridicule is not without reason. In the past, Spain could only rely on the French Empire to maintain its status as a big power, and even look down on them. But since Spain joined the Hague International Organization, especially after the organization imposed strong sanctions on the French Empire, France belatedly discovered the benefits of Spain as an ally. So recently, the French embassy in Madrid has increased its frequency of movement, and even a lot of 18th century wines that have been treasured in the Palace of Versailles for a long time have been shipped to the Spanish royal palace. This way of showing goodwill made Queen Isabella II very excited. Spanish Prime Minister Ramon Narvaez was also in a good mood. He said, "Since the Ottoman Empire and Italy are both pursuing independent foreign policies, it is obviously an opportunity for Spain to get rid of the influence of the French Empire in the country." Queen Isabella II nodded and said, "Yes, it is time for Spain to restore its diplomatic self." On July 8, 1868, the Spanish royal government issued a statement announcing that it would invite Italy and the Ottoman Empire to conduct naval exercises in the Mediterranean at the end of July, with the aim of maintaining peace and stability in the Mediterranean and reducing the threat of war. Spain's statement was surprising, because Spain actually abandoned its long-term ally, the French Empire, and conducted military exchanges with the Mediterranean powers Italy and the Ottoman Empire alone. People with discerning eyes immediately understood that Spain was stating its position. Obviously, Spain also began to lean towards the middle in terms of Europe's position. However, after an emergency meeting in Paris, Paris sent a high-level delegation to visit Madrid. The results of the negotiations between the two sides were unknown, and there was no follow-up, but Paris chose to remain silent after the delegation returned. On July 14, 1868, Spanish Prime Minister Ramon Narvaez announced at the Prime Minister's office that a naval exercise would be conducted in August off the coast of the Far East colony of the Philippines, and the Netherlands, the French Empire, and the British Empire would be invited to participate. At the same time, Spain, in principle, requested that the participating naval fleets should be as close as possible to the Far East. What does this mean? We have no other intentions, mainly because we don't want to waste fuel. As everyone knows, the naval fuel of various countries currently occupies a lot of funds, and the Spanish economy can only support exercises after saving in this regard. This move by the Kingdom of Spain further shows that Spain is moving towards neutrality in the position of the European powers. Pulling the Netherlands in was obviously to let the Netherlands endorse Spain. However, unexpectedly, the Netherlands quickly agreed and would select warships from the Far East to participate in the near future. Dutch Foreign Minister Chancellor Van even said that the Netherlands would invite the Spanish Philippine fleet to visit the Hawaiian Islands shortly after participating in the Philippine exercise. The Spanish Philippine fleet will become the first international navy of our Kingdom of the Netherlands in the largest Hawaiian fleet base in the Central Pacific. This shows that the relationship between the Netherlands and Spain is developing towards stability, and the friendship between our two countries will be greatly enhanced. I hope that the two countries can support each other on Pacific issues in the future. The Netherlands' statement made Spain very satisfied. It is even said that Queen Isabella II is preparing to visit the Netherlands soon to discuss asking the Netherlands to help develop the Philippine economy. At this time, everyone understood that the Queen had this idea. Compared with other countries, the Netherlands' status as a medium-sized power, or the last great power, is what Spain is most assured of. For example, Prussia, Britain, and the French Empire are rich in capital, but they are all ambitious. Compared with the Netherlands, which has a vast territory and a sparse population and believes that it is underpopulated, the Netherlands poses a much smaller threat to Spain's rule in the Philippines. However, what the Queen did not know was that she was actually like a sheep walking into a tiger's mouth, because she did not understand that from the beginning, William IV had always put the development of strength and power in the Far East first. As for Europe, It was just the Netherlands integrating into the most advanced and developed technological world. Chapter 410. Are colonies difficult to rule? 1868. The French government was exposed that Napoleon III was very dissatisfied with Spain's move, so he was hesitating whether to participate in the exercise held by Spain off the coast of the Philippines. Obviously, this was a threatening temptation. Queen Isabel II of Spain was very dissatisfied after hearing it. The current diplomatic circle of the Spanish government still believes that the French Empire only emphasizes constructive role and takes a negative attitude towards Spain. It has no actual influence, but actively curbs Spain's inclination towards neutral diplomacy. Many Spanish diplomatic experts said that in the past, Spain overtook care of the core interests of the French Empire, but the French Empire did not consider the position of Spain. Therefore, the Kingdom of Spain needs to use a new foreign policy, not a question of anti-French or pro-French, but to improve the cognition of Spanish diplomacy. After the mid-19th century, the world was facing unprecedented difficulties. After entering this mid-century, the war was almost uninterrupted. The territorial conflicts and ambitions of European powers continued to expand. The Russian Empire launched 2 full-scale attacks to expand to the south of the Middle East, and the international community was full of disputes over the construction of a new order for the status of various countries. Domestic egoism was rampant. Spain chose to remain neutral between the French Empire and the United Kingdom and other powerful countries. Its ambiguous and strategic attitude was not welcomed by any country, and the long-standing stalemate with Portugal did not make any progress. In addition, the economic insecurity caused by the uncertainty of pulling raw materials from the Far East back to Europe, and the failure to take proactive measures, led to the instability of the Spanish economy. Spain's foreign policy began with a reflection of its past diplomacy approaching the French Empire. Through calm realists and analysis, the previous Spanish government diplomacy was used as a negative example. Although Spain has established an alliance with the French Empire, its relationship with Portugal is ambiguous, making it difficult to unify the interests of the east and west of the Iberian Peninsula. This is very sad for Spain. Because Spain has never considered itself a small country, and in fact it is not. It is even difficult to accept the idea of a medium-sized country. But the reality is that there is the French Empire in the north, the Kingdom of Italy, a rising country across the sea to the east, Portugal to the west, and the British Empire across the sea. There are also countries in Central and Northern Europe who dream of being active on the Mediterranean stage. This is the geopolitical confusion that Spain is currently facing in the international political reality. While Isabella II emphasized the restoration of Spain's international status at home, she also emphasized the restoration of various relations between Spain and major powers. For example, Spain's previous strengths came from offshore projects. Britain has expressed concerns about this in recent days. In the eyes of the UK, the new government of Isabella II is different from the previous Spanish government and may join the ranks of neutral countries, such as Italy and the Ottoman Empire. Form a neutral group among these countries to fight against the other 5 major European powers. This is not a club of small countries, but a group of countries comparable to European powers. Some people analyzed that if Italy, Spain and the Ottoman Empire formed a group in the east, middle and west of the Mediterranean, Britain and France would basically be marginalized. In addition, if Spain cooperated with the International Hague Court, Europe would almost be divided and the major powers would be surrounded. Therefore, the UK officially announced that it would send a delegation to communicate with major European powers, hoping to coordinate to deal with this situation that made Britain not comfortable. On July 20, 1868, the French Empire explicitly rejected the British delegation's proposal for cooperation between the 2 countries to jointly deal with other countries. Prime Minister Olivier said, "There is no such thing as the French Empire forming an alliance with other countries for this. We have always been self-reliant and we will not rely on anyone." The French Empire's approach was very strange, but Britain did not intend to give up, so it visited the Kingdom of Prussia, but also Heidenheim. Prussia said it would not take any action for this, and Bismarck even said that it would not do anything that would harm our friendship with Italy, Spain, and the Ottoman Empire. Prime Minister Disraeli was immediately disappointed. At present, European countries have begun to wake up. Great powers will not do whatever they want. The environment needed by the Netherlands is gradually taking shape, but it is not enough. The Netherlands needs to face future development opportunities. Population growth is the ultimate goal in the next period of time. Economically, the Netherlands is currently developing rapidly, so I am not worried. However, in terms of culture, the Netherlands does not currently have an advantage, especially Paris and Rome in the south of the Netherlands, which are the most popular cultural places for Europeans. Therefore, it seems that the Netherlands wants to win in the cultural strategy. It seems to be very small, at least for now. William IV secretly thought, Britain is absolutely not at ease with the rise of the Netherlands. Although Queen Victoria looks harmless, those who know her history are shocked by the cruel rule of this widow. No one believes that the massacres around the world dare to act at will. Such a female executioner was actually worshipped by many descendants ruled by colonists in later generations. I am also drunk. But it can also be seen from this how superb Britain is in manipulating public opinion. Looking back at his previous world, many people in the colonies ruled by Britain even yearn for the history of life under colonization, which indirectly shows that British policies have worked. William IV also analyzed and found that when Britain began to colonize, it would plunder without scruples and did not treat people as human beings. But when they knew they were about to leave the colonies, they would take advantage of the weakness of people's hearts. People only remember the tenderness and benefits of the last meeting. While making a good attitude of compensation before leaving, it will also cultivate a group of loyal or consistent candidates with the interests of Britain, using the power that has not been lost before leaving, paving the way for these people, and after they succeed in taking office, with the support of these leading party public opinion, the ruled people will have the idea of unprecedented prosperity, and at the same time be misled into the economy that may gradually weaken next. The British began to care too much about their former colonies, show concern for their well-being, be friendly to the people, etc., to highlight the benefits they gave them at the end of their rule. When contradictions appeared in the management of the local government after they were driven away, they immediately took the opportunity to stir up trouble and incite their supporters to stand up and stir up trouble. They even took the opportunity to take away more benefits and wanted to seize the power they had lost. In fact, this set of British policies did not appear in the 19th century, because the nation at that time had not yet awakened, so they all silently endured colonial rule. The Netherlands is currently using this policy of the United Kingdom to rule in Africa. Chapter 411 How to obtain the status of a great power? The Netherlands needs to make the centripetal force of African colonies all concentrated in the Netherlands, and some means are necessary. Although they don't want to, no monarch will give up the idea of territorial expansion. Although William IV comes from the peaceful era of the future, just like playing a game, he will not think that between giving up halfway and returning with a great victory, I will choose the former. Therefore, the Netherlands must stabilize its African colonies so that the Netherlands can deploy more things targeting the Indian Ocean and Europe and America. After more than 10 years of war, it is not necessary to guess that the world is currently war-weary. Even in the motherland of the previous life, General Zhuo Zongtang is still fighting against the rebellion in the West. It is not necessary to think that their domestic situation is not good. The Civil War in the United States and North America lasted for nearly 7 years, and the losses were heavy. Millions of people were killed in the war. Needless to say, Africa is almost the same as killing chickens and ducks. The Balkan Peninsula is stable, but as long as you look at the situation there, no one will think that those major countries will stop fighting for territory because of this. The Baltic Sea seems stable, but in fact, they are all pretending to be deep. In short, William IV knew that the current war would slowly stop, and the next few decades would be a rare period of peace with peace as the majority. Therefore, the Netherlands needs to make advanced deployments. For example, how should the Netherlands position itself in the international arena in this peaceful period? Continue to be a medium-sized country? If so, William IV does not think that the Netherlands will have any potential after missing this period. Rising to a great power? The current recognition of the Netherlands does not seem to be that high, right? William IV actually understands where the fundamental great power status that the Netherlands lacks is. War? The Netherlands is not suitable for launching a large-scale war at present, because with a small population, the loss of population will fall into a greater potential crisis. Therefore, the Dutch approach of launching a war is not advisable. But if the war is not launched, how can the Netherlands obtain the status of a great power recognition? William IV actually calculated it early, that is, the 100,000 native troops trained by the Netherlands in the Far East in Africa. That's right, William IV is preparing to use them to improve the status of the Netherlands and make their contribution to becoming a part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Don't forget that there are too many natives in these two places, which is also a threat to the Dutch. Eliminating the enemy while improving the advantages needed for internal governance is creating favorable conditions for the Dutch to govern the Far East. Even if someone in the future pursues it, William IV has already prepared a reason to prevaricate, no matter black or white, as long as they come to the Netherlands. They are Dutch. They are the greatest Dutch. We pay high tribute to them for sacrificing their lives for the country. William IV believes that no one can find fault with this statement, even those so-called human rights activists can hardly do it. After all, the country needs people to protect it, and every citizen is a guardian. William IV wants to use this policy to break through the barriers between Dutch whites and natives, which can be used just right. Their reference is also worth the money. This is war, and there is also economy. The future economic policy of the Netherlands naturally needs to explode more thoroughly in the Second Industrial Revolution. As long as this wave of industrial development is firmly occupied, the Netherlands' position in the world will be further consolidated. And even the dominant position will last for more than 100 years. Therefore, the economic development method that William IV will make will naturally focus on the Far East. Why? After all, in Europe, there is always the possibility of being affected by several major European countries or the First World War in Europe, and there is a 100% chance that all previous efforts will be wasted. In this case, placing it in the Far East is the best and most suitable approach to ensure security. Australia is vast and sparsely populated, with huge potential for economic development, and the Dutch East Indies, that is Indonesia, and overseas territories in Africa, all of which play a supporting role in the economy there. If the Netherlands does not use this natural environment of economic development advantages and natural security environment, it may be punished by God. Future wars in Europe will also be difficult to effect here. If everything succeeds, then the Netherlands will become like the United States in the previous life, becoming a great power comparable to Britain after World War I in the future. During World War II, the Netherlands will naturally not be worse than the United States. Although many people in later generations know this, who in this world knows it? Isn't it? Bang bang bang. Your Majesty, the Prime Minister and Mr. Randy are already outside the door. The knock on the door and the reminder of the chief guard brought William IV back to his senses. Come in. After entering, Tallbeck saluted and sat on the right-hand side under the gaze of William IV. Not long after, Randy Walton, the general manager of the Dutch East India Company, also sat down. The development of the Far East has entered the right track. Everything is moving towards the goal. Perhaps it will only take 10 years. With my full support, an Australian continent that is not weaker than European countries will appear, and even with the combination of the Dutch East Indies and the Pacific Islands, it will form a strong force. William IV said confidently, in the safe environment there, even if facing the challenge of Britain at that time, the Netherlands will not be afraid. In 1878, it will be a good day for the Netherlands to become the hegemon of the Far East. As for Europe, it can only rely on the strength of various countries. There is no way. The Dutch mainland in Europe is too small, and the Greenland purchased from Denmark is sparsely populated. These have limited the influence of the Netherlands in Europe. If it were not for the early alliance with Sweden and Denmark, it is not certain whether the Netherlands can even maintain its status and influence as a medium-sized power in the future. In this situation, the Netherlands can only exercise this equal power position in Europe. When William IV thought of this, he couldn't help but think of Spain, Italy and the Ottoman Empire, which have been jumping high recently. William IV smiled and asked the two of them, although Isabel II of Spain seems to be gaining popularity, she is also facing many difficulties. In her country, the most urgent task is to ensure that the Prime Minister Ramon Narvaez's regime, which is supported by Isabel II, can continue to govern, but it seems that it is also very likely to fall into a quagmire. I think the Netherlands is most likely to be in a state of too much foreign exchange. How to ensure the diplomatic space of the Netherlands between the contradictions of European countries, how to maintain the relationship between the Netherlands and other countries, how to solve the anti-Dutch sentiment that has emerged in recent years, how to restore the relationship with France, which seems to have no emotional intersection between the people of the Netherlands and France after France invaded the Kingdom of Siam, and how to deal with the military security brought about by the United States of America in North America, which has recently become more important than European countries, and the economic security brought about by the changes in the Dutch industrial chain, etc., all of which require us to find a way to solve. This is a foreign strategy different from the past. The three major projects of industrial economy, military and diplomatic strategy are correct. This is the topic we need to think about today. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 412, The Netherlands' Rising National Status. Thorbecke replied, "Your Majesty, I think the historical issue of the Netherlands and France's affiliation with Belgium has been continuously used by both countries as a tool to create emotional confrontation in the domestic politics of the two countries, and there has been no breakthrough in the relationship with France. The Netherlands and France share the dividends brought by a peaceful border. At the same time, the two countries have insisted on industrial openness to each other for many years. The capital economy has made the industrialization of the two countries second only to the United Kingdom and Europe. I believe that the triangular cooperation pattern of the Netherlands, France and Prussia in Western Europe, based on the relationship between the Netherlands and France, cannot be hindered by historical reasons. Blaming each other will only deepen the wounds between the two countries. We should distinguish the historical issue of the French Empire's invasion of the Netherlands from the current cooperation. We may adopt a two-track strategy of actively seeking current cooperation with the Netherlands while seriously discussing historical issues." After Prime Minister Thorbecke finished speaking, Randy Alton also said, "Your Majesty, I also think what the Prime Minister said is right. In recent years, the Netherlands and France have been very wary of their relationship with France because of the history of Napoleon almost destroying the Netherlands. On the contrary, Prussia has a great influence on our country, which needs to be curbed. After all, from a realistic perspective, everything needs a balance. When the relationship with France deteriorates to a certain extent, it is time for us to pull back a little. Prussia's current relationship with us is deteriorating. If the Netherlands' favorability towards Prussia is slightly exploited by the other side, then we may fall into the trap of public opinion and fall into a disadvantage. The current situation in the southern United States seems to be because of this, which has led to the pro-British South, under the rhythm of the United Kingdom, completely opposing the North. Therefore, we need to prepare for a rainy day and prepare for the Dutch people to be more rational in public opinion towards Prussia. These two people are currently the top representatives of the Dutch political and business circles, representing the views of both circles. The two are obviously inclined to ease relations with the French Empire, but in terms of the actual relationship with Prussia, they have proposed to draw a clearer line with Prussia." After a moment, William IV nodded and said, "It must be admitted that the situation of the Kingdom of the Netherlands is not that simple, but the Kingdom of the Netherlands is no longer in the era of more than 50 years ago. Now the Netherlands is no longer a shrimp that needs to worry about a whale dispute. We, the Kingdom of the Netherlands, must emphasize to them that the Netherlands has the fifth largest economic strength in the world after Britain, France, Prussia and Austria. It has been the country with industrial and technological strength, second only to Britain and France, since the second half of the 19th century. At the same time, the Netherlands' military and technological strength can almost be compared with Britain and France, at least in the Navy. In terms of territory, the Netherlands' development efforts in Africa and the Far East are not inferior to Britain, and far above the French Empire. Therefore, it is time for the Kingdom of the Netherlands to no longer belittle itself, but to seize international hotspots through self-objectification and play a leading role in the international community. Our Kingdom of the Netherlands needs to show the Netherlands great power diplomacy." William IV's words of great power diplomacy immediately shocked Thorbecke and Randy Orton, and they all showed varying degrees of surprise on their faces. Great power. Is the Netherlands' great power status confirmed? Your Majesty is stating that the Netherlands is on the verge of becoming a great power. Can it enter the club of great powers with just one move? Come to think of it, the Netherlands' recent international activities are all, as Your Majesty said, pushing the Netherlands to the center of international hot news. At present, the Netherlands is already a country with very high visibility in the international community. In America alone, the status of the Netherlands is no longer inferior to that of the French Empire. If it were not for the fact that the Netherlands lacks the ability to conduct large-scale operations and military operations, then the Netherlands could even compete directly with Britain for maritime hegemony. After all, the presence of the British Navy in Chile and South Africa is destined to be difficult for other countries to match. In South America, the British Navy is still the only most powerful existence. If the Netherlands can quickly position itself as a great power, it can, to a certain extent, satisfy South America's need for foreign aid to fight against Britain and the United States. The natural advantages of the Netherlands are naturally one of the best. This is why the French Empire has gained a foothold in Paraguay. Thorbecke continued, France and Prussia are very important countries for the Netherlands, so a certain degree of adjustment must be made to the diplomacy of Prussia and the French Empire. I think the Netherlands expects too much from the influence of the bilateral feelings between Prussia and the Netherlands, and tries not to adopt a policy of surprising Prussia. As this atmosphere expands, there is an abnormal phenomenon that the Netherlands may act according to Prussia's face in almost all areas of bilateral relations between the Netherlands and Prussia. Thorbecke also believed that Prussia had only been emphasizing that it had no ill will towards the Netherlands, and that it had taken a negative attitude towards the international influence of the Netherlands. It did not play the silent wait-and-see attitude that we actually hope to see, but instead actively curbed the influence of the rise of the Netherlands in the Americas and Northern Europe. Its purpose of balancing us was very clear. So, Your Majesty, the Netherlands used to pay too much attention to the attitude of the Bismarck government and overly cared about the core interests of Prussia, but Prussia did not consider the position of the Netherlands. Therefore, I think the Dutch government should implement a new foreign policy. We need to not be anti-Prussian, anti-French, or even anti-British Empire, but to improve the recognition of the Netherlands in society. Second, establish a new coordinate for the Netherlands between the contradictions of competition among major powers, such as Britain, France, and Prussia. As the contradictions between countries have surpassed trade competition, the future will be completely transformed into a competition for spheres of influence dominated by the trade teams of major powers. This will put the Netherlands in a crossroads dilemma. The Kingdom of the Netherlands, which relies on neighboring countries to abide by the rules on security issues, and the same is true for the economy, seems to have little choice in its position in Europe. However, in order to maintain communication between Central and Western Europe, the Dutch government has recently promoted the advancement of relations between various countries and even had excessive expectations of neighboring countries. To some extent, it has adopted a low-profile diplomacy towards the French Empire, the Kingdom of Prussia and the United Kingdom. But it is undeniable that in this process, the effect of the Netherlands' gestures has been minimal, and even the relationship between the Kingdom of the Netherlands and its neighbors has been damaged to a certain extent. So I think it is first necessary to rebuild the Netherlands' foreign relations. Watching Thorbecke's scattered efforts, he transformed the Kingdom of the Netherlands' foreign policy from Western Europe to European and even global strategy. Although Randy Alton is 80 years old, he still feels excited. In this case, Thorbecke emphasized that the new diplomatic orientation of the Kingdom of the Netherlands is based on upright and solid security, and it is necessary to build a central country to strengthen the Netherlands' influence in the international community. He also emphasized the development of the major international organizations established by the Netherlands into a cooperation scope that goes beyond traditional military cooperation and economic development and humanities development, and rebuild the Netherlands plus Europe plus global partnership including security and economy. On the contrary, facing France, the Netherlands must embody a new type of European state relations based on mutual respect, and ask these countries to play a responsible role when the interests of the Netherlands are threatened. Chapter 413 Population Policy 1815, the Netherlands was restored 53 years ago. At the age of 27, he served as the finance officer under the former Dutch King William I. He was eventually named the Count of the Netherlands in 1830, which was a great honor to his family. Although many years have passed, the scene of being conferred the title will never be forgotten. Randy Alton is the current ruler of the Dutch East India Company, second only to William IV. Even in 1815, he was a newly emerging shareholder of the Dutch East India Company and emerged in the Dutch East India Company in the Far East. The most surprising thing about him is that he likes the Confucian culture of the Far East the most. It is said that he is familiar with many translated literary works of the Far East superpower. He also has a lot of poems and songs. He is also familiar with a lot of historical materials of that country's emperors. His Majesty William II and William III belong to the middle class and are kings who maintain the status quo. This is his Far Eastern evaluation. If this continues, the Netherlands will be able to defend its own piece of land. It is because of this evaluation that Randy Alton, who did not see much prospects after 1850, decisively began to divide his family property into two and marched into North America. It was his eldest son Randy Blash who did it. It was originally just an unintentional move to give the family more opportunities. But he did not expect William IV to find him when he was the crown prince in 1857, and began to borrow the resources of his eldest son Blash, and slowly participated in the situation in the United States. Even from 1857 to 1861 before the Civil War, in less than 5 years, the Randy family actually became the largest family consortium in the United States, overpowering the Rothschild family who were preparing to deploy there. The expansion was so fierce that it shocked the whole of North America. In the end, it was because of the war that the Randy family was restricted in its expansion in the South and slowly shrank its front. Randy Orton also learned from William IV that it was all the work of the Rothschild family, in order to prevent the Randy family from grabbing their reserved share. Politics business. Randy Orton never believed that there was a simple distinction between politics and business in the Western world. In fact, they were all the same group of people, but they just had different positions for division of labor and cooperation. At the end of 1861, William II's self-departure from the kingship shocked the whole of Europe and the world, but only a few of them knew that this was just an ordinary transition of a mediocre father giving his family to his genius son to manage the family business. Facts have proved that all of this is worth it, and His Majesty William II's approach has also proved to be correct. In the 7 years since His Majesty William IV took power, he has helped the Netherlands complete a terrible transformation. Whether in terms of economy or politics, the Netherlands' status can be not only in Western Europe and Europe, but also in the world. The Netherlands' total economic output has entered the top 5 industrial countries in the world, and the per capita income has surpassed the first industrial country, Britain, and is the highest in the world. The public's support for the government of the Kingdom of the Netherlands and the Dutch royal family is unprecedentedly high. At this time, William IV's reputation as the European sea coachman for reviving the Netherlands could no longer explain his merits. Many people even believed that his achievements had made him the greatest Dutch king in Dutch history. After all, the Netherlands' territory in the Far East and its influence in Africa had long surpassed the sea coachman era, and the Netherlands' influence in the Americas was even more unparalleled. In summary, the Netherlands has now reached the highest peak in history. The only thing it lacks is finance, and other aspects are far superior. William IV said, "When we fought 4 naval battles with Britain and ultimately failed, our world's most powerful financial capital Amsterdam was replaced by London, and the tulip financial capital in Europe could only be replaced by the latecomers London and even Paris. At present, even New York is threatening our position as the 3rd largest financial center." Randy Orton, Your Majesty, although Amsterdam's location is good, each country may launch its own capital center to facilitate its own financing. Seeing that William IV and the other two were silent, they obviously did not deny it. He added, "I think the development of the Netherlands, just like the strategy we formulated before, should be focused on the Far East." William IV's heart moved and he looked at him. Randy Orton said, "I think our territory in the Far East is so large that we can promote the rapid rise of the financial center there. Sydney is good, Melbourne can also exist as an auxiliary center, and Jakarta in the north can also be a local regional center. As long as there are these financial centers, the capital operation of the Netherlands there will be much simpler than it is now. At the same time, it will be more convenient for our assets here to connect with there, which will help us better deal with emergencies in Europe." William IV looked at Thorbecke. William IV asked, "What is the monthly progress of the local population migration?" Thorbecke said, "It has eased after the past few years. On average, the first 6 months of this year were about 10,000 people per month. 10,000 per month, more than 100,000 a year. This progress is not low. You must know that the local population of the Netherlands has dropped to about 4 million, while the Dutch in the Far East have exceeded 6 million. Many people will ask, wasn't the population of the Netherlands at the beginning about 5 or 6 million? Now the population is over 10 million? In fact, there are 2 reasons for this: natural and unnatural population growth. Natural growth is natural because the Netherlands has been vigorously promoting childbirth more than 10 years ago. At the same time, the Dutch government has also stepped up the reform of the medical system in the Netherlands and increased the number of medical training schools in the Netherlands. Therefore, under this investment, the birth rate, birth survival rate, and fertility rate in the Netherlands have been greatly improved in all aspects compared to before. Under the welfare, the Dutch have gone from a normal population of 6 million in just 10 years to 2 million adults who are waiting to have children, giving birth to 3 children in 10 years. This is actually a very normal thing. What's more, isn't there a natural growth? The return of the Dutch population who have been exiled to South Africa and the births they have driven are all very promising. After all, when your 3 generations of grandparents and grandchildren emigrated overseas with the intention of getting rich, they found out years later that the hometown that their family despised was the most developed place to live in the world, then migrating back was the best choice. Thorbecke said, according to our government statistics, our Dutch whites will exceed 11 million by the end of this year, and may double to 22 million in 15 to 20 years. 22 million is already comparable to the current Spain, Italy or the Ottoman Empire, and is also similar to the current 23 million people of the United States of America in the north. Possible? Does it mean uncertain? A difference of one word, 1,000 miles away 20 years is too long. The Netherlands is growing, and the population of other countries is also growing. If the Dutch whites intermarry with other ethnic groups or give birth to Dutch blood descendants of different bloodlines across ethnic groups, then the Dutch population will explode. William IV's words made Thorbecke and Randy Orton unable to react. Your Majesty means to make the Dutch more promiscuous and pregnant. Thorbecke and Randy Orton took a deep breath. Now they knew what to do. His Majesty seemed to be determined to do it for his own population policy. Chapter 414, Freedom of Marriage in the 19th Century. 1868, an ordinary civil incident in the Netherlands attracted the attention of all Dutch people, and even many European countries were concerned about it. J, 27 years old, a native of the Netherlands, was originally a teacher at the University of The Hague. In 1865, he moved to Melbourne with his family and is currently an ordinary teacher at the University of Melbourne. Maricini, an Australian Aboriginal, 25 years old, became a Pacific Aboriginal language teacher in Melbourne in 1866. She is passionate and kind. Like an ordinary love story, a noble white man from the Kingdom of the Netherlands and a dark-skinned Australian Aboriginal woman fell in love. In the end, the two fell in love. They wanted to register their marriage, but were told that it could not be completed because the local government had not received a notice to allow intermarriage between the two ethnic groups. At the same time, the two were also told that they had different religious beliefs, so it was difficult for the church to hold a wedding. However, due to the racial differences between the two sides, the views of their respective families, and the unique superiority of Europeans, the love between the two was soon made public and became the subject of heated discussion from the University of Melbourne. At that time, it was rare to hear of white people marrying black people in Europe. Even in terms of identity recognition, many countries had discrimination, not to mention marriage. Although the Netherlands was the first to implement the practice of allowing all ethnic groups in the Netherlands to enjoy Dutch identity in recent years, in terms of marriage, each ethnic group was still selective and looked for their own kind. At least the Dutch white people looked for other Europeans as their second object in addition to their own native Dutch. Even if there were occasional accidents, they would be quickly stopped. So when J and Maricini, two advanced workers at the University of Melbourne, one of the top universities in the Australian continent, openly engaged in a love affair between white and black, it caused a heated discussion at the University of Melbourne, and the city of Melbourne, the entire state of William, and the entire Australian continent were shocked. I treat love sincerely. I think in front of God, love is not divided by race and is equally great. JJ and I are real. Although we know how difficult it will be, we really want to be together. I think the Dutch government and His Majesty William IV will agree with us. Maricini. On July 22, 1868, J and Maricini openly stood in the Dutch Australia Times and announced that the two would not be afraid of people's terrible verbal attacks, and their hearts would not change. On July 23, 1868, a Melbourne pastor of the Melbourne Protestant Church in the Netherlands met with J, and the pastor asked J to remain loyal to Protestant Christianity. I don't want to change Maricini's beliefs, because everyone can get their own freedom, including her freedom to change my beliefs. J's words made many Australian mainland Christians dissatisfied, and even many churches only recognized U and asked J to be promoted to Protestantism. On July 29, 1868, Australian mainland Protestant Bishop Udo met with the Dutch Far East Deputy Prime Minister Chancellor Van Hall and asked the Dutch government to continue to support Protestant affairs. This is exerting pressure. Obviously, the bishop has realized that the Dutch government has not participated too much in the two people's increasingly cross-skin love for so long, which has made the bishop realize something. That's why they were in a hurry to find Chancellor Van Hall, the head of the Dutch government in the Far East. Obviously, the people behind him have begun to find that the Dutch government has loosened on this issue. The meeting between the two has not only become the focus of everyone's attention in the Far East, but also attracted great attention in Europe. Because this is likely to trigger a herd effect. If the Netherlands continues to insist on the White Netherlands, then other countries may not make changes. However, if the Netherlands considers the United States of America and completely gives those lower people with skin color the same status, and even marriage is not restricted, then it is conceivable that as a core member of the Western European elite countries, other countries may follow suit. It is real. We don't want the Netherlands to change, because we are also Germanic people, and I don't want our blood to be diluted. Disraeli, Prime Minister of the British Empire. Although Prussia has integrated a lot of territory, it implies that Prussia's blood has always been on the European continent, and we are very white and clean. Bismarck, Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Prussia. The French Empire is the noblest nation in Europe, and we are very happy that Paris's policy has been to maintain its purity until now. French Prime Minister Olivier. The Austro-Hungarian Empire is a great multi-ethnic country. We will not criticize any multi-ethnic country, but we are obsessed with our diversity. At present, the Austro-Hungarian Empire stops at the white people in Central and Eastern Europe. Archduke Rainer Ferdinand, Prime Minister of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The Kingdom of Sweden will not criticize any actions taken by the Netherlands, because we believe that the Netherlands will do things that are beneficial to itself. Swedish Foreign Prime Minister Ludwig. Denmark and the Netherlands are in the same situation, so we empathize with the situation of the Netherlands. Danish Prime Minister Monrad. The statements of various countries have made this originally ordinary domestic civil case in the Netherlands incredibly rise to the level of internationalization. This makes people have to sigh that the Netherlands is worthy of being an international hotspot. Of course, as things develop, some countries that want to see the Netherlands laugh have begun to feel excited because of the Church's participation in the test. Because, as a member of the Western denominations, the Netherlands has a strong symbiotic influence on any of the three major Christian denominations. Although it is not the Middle Ages now, countries rarely disobey the rules of the Church. Obviously, the incident in the Netherlands is likely to cause a rift between the Kingdom of the Netherlands and the Church. Many people are speculating that the Dutch government should choose to retreat in the end. After all, how can the Netherlands anger the public when missionaries have worked so hard to preach for the benefit of the West? Therefore, they all speculate that the Netherlands will end the matter hastily. However, will it really be like this? On August 2, 1868, a group of saints from the University of Melbourne took to the streets of Melbourne to protest and demand that the Dutch government lift restrictions on marriage. They went to the local church from the Melbourne city government, and they also asked Bishop Udo not to block freedom of marriage. This is something God would not do, because God has never been so unloving. We think that the church should persuade people to be good instead of breaking up marriages. This is a group of progressive young people. They are all university students from the Australian continent and even the far east of the Netherlands. As these people connect, they slowly expand to various universities. Even, under their leadership, middle school students openly participate. Chapter 415 My Integration Policy, out of many, 1. On August 10, 1868, more than 100,000 students from the far east of the Netherlands participated in the march. Fortunately, everything was carried out peacefully. This is the slogan in bold black letters on the New York Times of the United States of America. The practice of the Netherlands joining the United States of America to live together has aroused great favorability towards the Netherlands in the entire United States of America. When European countries keep their distance from other people of color, students from the far east of the Netherlands have shown with practical actions how broad-minded they, the future elites of the Netherlands, are. We can expect that the United States of America will have a like-minded fellow traveler in the governance of the nation. The reports in North America tend to be positive. However, some European countries are mostly negative. The 11 million people in the Netherlands are likely to be submerged under the coverage of 20 million indigenous people. Perhaps many years later, white women will marry other people of color, and white men's wives will be black. This is really terrible. I feel panic when I think about it. Yes, the Netherlands is now in a dangerous situation. They have been too forward in speech and neglected discipline. Maybe the Dutch government will sort out speech and return to the European norm. As the debate intensified, the Netherlands showed a polarized situation. Many people supported free love, but many people were unfamiliar with conventions and were unwilling to put down their heads and recognize equal status. On August 14, 1868, the Queen of the Netherlands, Queen Sandra, announced her support for freedom of marriage. She said she was a beneficiary of freedom of marriage. The Queen did not say it, but it was true that the love history between William IV and her had been dug out. The love between the two of them when they were young made people see the sweetness. The two did not insist on this love for the constraints of power, which made William IV gain more support from the Kingdom of the Netherlands. With her coming out, the wind direction in the Netherlands changed immediately. Many Dutch nobles and capitalists came out to support her. Even many noblewomen in Amsterdam loudly expressed their support for the freedom of marriage. On August 15, 1868, the International Women's League announced its support for Queen Alexandra's views on marriage. The organization publicly stated that women should not distinguish between races to get married. Women's freedom of marriage is also one of the goals that the International Women's League has always advocated. The current view of freedom of marriage in the Netherlands is in line with their goals. On August 19, 1868, the Dutch Parliament passed the new marriage law proposal Jarirzeni Marriage Act in the House of Representatives and the Senate with more than two-thirds of the votes in the House of Representatives, officially allowing white people in the Dutch royal palace to marry people of all races and skin colors, and it also clearly noted that people of color were included. Two-thirds. The number of votes passed by the Dutch Parliament surprised everyone. Under the obvious pressure from European countries, the Netherlands was unmoved and passed a Jarirzeni Marriage Act without any impact. This is really surprising. European countries discovered that the Netherlands had unknowingly ceased to be influenced by European countries. At the same time, the Netherlands had actually taken the lead in European kingdoms in intermarriage with other people of color. Doesn't the Dutch royal family worry that this will affect the support rate of the Dutch royal family? On August 20, 1868, the Dutch Parliament passed the King's Power Act, requiring all people with Dutch nationality to swear allegiance to the King of the Netherlands from the moment they obtained Dutch nationality, and to abide by the laws of the Kingdom of the Netherlands and not to do anything disrespectful to the King of the Netherlands. Below the bill, it is noted that violations will be subject to certain legal penalties. Its legislation made many people realize that it marked that the Kingdom of the Netherlands had truly expanded the King's followers to the natives. Politicians from various countries did not realize until this moment that this ordinary marriage event in the Netherlands had become a new opportunity for the Netherlands to govern the country after more than a month of development. The Dutch royal palace, like Dieing, slowly and orderly extended its tentacles into the Far East and African natives, as if slowly sharing the meal on the plate, very formal and gentlemanly. At this point, everyone understood that everything seemed to be just a drama, and the Dutch government had only been writing the script from the beginning, while the prime ministers of various countries who spoke next to them became commentators on both sides of the view, and the people of various countries who read the news in the newspapers became spectators. When they understood, many people changed color. One nation conquered another nation by force, but culturally, the conqueror obeyed the conquered. This phenomenon is often seen in the history of civilization. 3,000 years ago, the Amorites entered Mesopotamia and settled there, and began to encroach on the surrounding areas. After 2 centuries, the Semitic language spoken by the Amorites replaced the Sumerian language in Mesopotamia, but culturally, the Amorites absorbed all other aspects of Sumerian culture and carried forward Sumerian culture. The Amorites became Babylonians, and their other cultural aspects are now not much different from the Sumerians. Kingdom of the Netherlands, Amsterdam, inside the Dutch royal palace. As the head of the family, William IV is now also a guest teacher of the royal family, and his students are Queen Alexandra and Prince Albert. Queen Alexandra asked, "So, if the Netherlands does not pay attention to cultural cultivation, then it is very likely that they will be assimilated by the natives." William IV nodded and said, "Although the chance is small, it is possible, isn't it? The culture developed by people who have lived in the local area for a long time is often the most suitable for local development. Weak outsiders want to directly destroy the local culture barbarically and cover the local culture with foreign culture. In most cases, It will only backfire. Alexandra said, "William, what you mean is that if we want to assimilate the natives and let them learn Dutch culture, we must first let them let down their guard, and then slowly work on it." "Yes, this time the marriage law is relaxed in order to make them feel that they are one of our own." William IV, ethnic integration and the consent of the nation-state under the guidance of mainstream culture are the most urgent things for the Netherlands at present. The population of the Netherlands has destined us to do so. Universal, stable and lasting integration will allow us to grow rapidly. As long as the Dutch whites firmly occupy a dominant position and use this as the foundation of their rule, united as one is the ethnic integration model adopted by the Netherlands established by immigrants of different ethnic groups. It is the successful path for the development of the Kingdom of the Netherlands and the future modern power of the Netherlands. Chapter 416, A Battle for a Diverse Population? 1868, amid a heated discussion in Europe, Cartony, the dean of the history department of the Hague University and the most influential weekly magazine in Europe, Le Echoes, conducted a face-to-face interview with Herman van Perron, the dean of the Diplomatic Academy of Leiden University, the oldest university in the Netherlands, in 1862, and also a special commentator of the most influential European Times. The two prime ministers discussed the hot topic in Europe, the Netherlands' formal inclusion of marriage between indigenous peoples and white people in the national treatment policy. Words such as ethnicity and ethnic culture and clear and strong ethnic consciousness are extremely rare in the 19th century. The ethnic identity that has been strengthened in the United States and other countries and regions around the world, as well as the conflicts and social divisions that have arisen from it, are largely because ethnic identity has been used as a mobilization tool for competing for political interests when the government has more resources. Many politicians have used ethnic diversity and cultural pluralism to make profits for themselves. Herman van Perron sighed, which reminded people of the struggle for power among the various ethnic groups in the United States some time ago, and staged a series of stories that shocked the world, which is really sad. Cartony, Mr. Van Perron, how do you think the Netherlands should deal with the crisis that may arise after the emergence of diversity in the Netherlands is exploited by others? Cartony, your question is to the point. Herman van Perron, whether it is the entire European history or world history, the trend of cultural pluralism should have at least two constructive contributions, so that it is meaningful. Cartony, which two? Herman van Perron, the first is to increase the sensitivity of Dutch society as a whole to discrimination against ethnic groups in the Netherlands, so that there will be positive improvements in local areas and attitudes, and corresponding measures will be taken in the Netherlands and the judiciary. The Dutch people and experts and scholars pay more attention to and do more research on the cultural heritage of diverse ethnic groups. Take the United States and North America as an example. A specific ethnic group, such as Irish and Italian Catholic immigrants, will not completely lose all the cultural customs brought from Europe in the process of deep integration into the mainstream society of the United States. Italian American women generally have a closer relationship with their parents than Irish American women. This phenomenon is difficult to explain apart from their respective current ethnic cultural heritage. Cartony, the problem is that there are inherent flaws in viewing and handling ethnic relations in the Netherlands from the perspective of cultural pluralism, especially when legislation and policies are influenced by this idea. Herman van Perron, the Netherlands must start to fight against racial discrimination seriously, and must also clearly oppose the real policies of cultural pluralism, but this is gradual. For example, in universities, ethnic identity is regarded as a factor in determining admission. This orientation does not encourage equality between individuals, but discriminates against other Dutch citizens by supporting specific groups of specific minorities, which is the so-called reverse discrimination. The result is to weaken the cohesion of Dutch citizens and the country as a whole. Cartony, Herman van Perron, for new immigrants and vulnerable minority groups, emphasizing surprise and striving for special treatment is definitely not a smooth path to enter the mainstream Dutch society. In fact, as early as the beginning of this century, when a large number of European countries immigrated to North America, American scholars began to worry that cultural pluralism would strengthen ethnic identity, which would lead to social equality and economic development issues that American society actually ignores, and further harm the interests of vulnerable groups. Herman van Perron said, in the name of cultural diversity, ethnic identity and cultural differences can be encouraged. This is not obvious in the United States, which is already diverse, but it is rare in the Netherlands. Therefore, The implementation of diversity in the Far East may dazzle many Dutch people. It is often not a spontaneous and voluntary choice of people, which will hinder personal development and often lead to contempt for the Dutch legal system and basic social order. It becomes a factor of tearing and splitting, which is often contrary to respecting human rights and human personality. Cardini. So, the Dutch government needs to face many difficulties? How do you decide how the Netherlands can complete the strategy of diversity and integration? Herman van Perron answered the question irrelevantly. In the early 19th century, many experts in Europe and North America who studied group issues had noticed that in the United States, a country with many immigrant groups, the absolute mainstream status of English and the rapid marginalization of the languages of new immigrants and indigenous peoples are one of the three major factors of American cohesion. English is a common language highly recognized by American citizens. The mixed residence and intermarriage of ethnic groups have already made it a unit without any specific ethnic area in geography. All of these point to building a truly solid bond of American unity. Therefore, the Dutch government must do a better job in Dutch than English in terms of official and folk languages. Secondly, intermarriage makes it easier for all ethnic groups to integrate. In terms of culture, the strategy of taking it for yourself and what's mine is yours should be implemented to achieve integration. At the same time, in the Netherlands, a single ethnic group cannot be fixed in one province to dominate, so as to avoid division. The interview with the Weekly Echo made Europe splash like adding oil to a hot pot. Prussia, Berlin. If the Netherlands succeeds in integrating the indigenous people for their own use, then it will be a revolutionary change for the Netherlands. The Netherlands will become stronger by a big step forward. The Netherlands with a population of 10 million and 30 million is definitely not on the same level. We have to be on guard. King William I of the Kingdom of Prussia said solemnly. He said to Bismarck, "At present, the industrial economy of the Netherlands is very strong, and its scale is almost the same as Prussia. The reason for the gap is the small population size of the Netherlands. If these 20 million people join, the Netherlands will be even more powerful, even if it cannot reach the scale of the White Dutch. As long as it reaches 1/3 or 1/2, the strength of the Netherlands will immediately double. That will not only be a huge shock to Prussia, but also to Britain. The impact on the balance of power in Europe will definitely be subversive." Crown Prince Frederick nodded and said, "Your Majesty is right. The economic scale of the Netherlands has grown at an alarming rate in the past decade or so. We in Prussia have grown fast enough, but the Netherlands is even more ferocious. In some years, the growth rate is more than double ours. The First World Industrial Revolution took place in Britain. I originally thought that the protagonist of the second one would be the Kingdom of Prussia. After all, we have invested a lot of energy in electrical power. However, the United States of America challenged Prussia in front, and the Netherlands also tried to grab a share in the back. The protagonist of the Second Industrial Revolution, which has just been judged by European economic masters, has become Prussia, the United States, the Netherlands and the United Kingdom. The four countries that have just been judged as the protagonists of the Second Industrial Revolution have become Prussia, the United States, the Netherlands and the United Kingdom. This has made the entire European economic power a battlefield for competition between the two sides of the Atlantic. Chapter 417 Berlin, the long-awaited oil? The Netherlands is increasing its own strength. If it succeeds, the population of the Netherlands will become unprecedentedly large. At the same time, the lack of labor in the Netherlands will be made up soon, which will be an unprecedented boost to the industrial strength of the Netherlands. The Crown Prince Frederick of the Kingdom of Prussia said with great concern, "Prussia's advantage over the Netherlands lies in Prussia's population of more than 30 million. Now the Netherlands has been supplemented by 20 million people, and now due to the European war, tens of thousands of Europeans are immigrating to the Netherlands in the Far East every year. These are all great boosts to the growth of the Netherlands' strength. In comparison, Prussia's advantages are also being removed bit by bit. We need to make a quick integration with other parts of the German Confederation in order to further enhance Prussia's strength." What Crown Prince Frederick said was not wrong. Prussia annexed the German Confederation with a population of more than 20 million. If completed, the population of more than 50 million will almost catch up with the 60 million population of Tsarist Russia, firmly sitting in the second place in Europe in terms of population. This is naturally a greater advantage for Prussia's economy. Thinking of this, Crown Prince Frederick said to Bismarck, "Mr. Prime Minister, I think the Dutch policy can be used on Prussia. He meant that the Dutch integration policy can be used to deal with the natives, so the people of the German Confederation, who are also white, will obviously have more integration advantages with Prussia, and it may be more convenient. Moltke did not wait for Bismarck to answer, but nodded unexpectedly and said, "What the Crown Prince said is right. Originally, it would not be troublesome for us people of the German Confederation to integrate. What's more, we are almost all Protestants and Germans, which are advantages that the Netherlands can hardly have when integrating the natives." After speaking, Moltke looked at Bismarck and smiled. "I really can't see how the Netherlands can compare with us in terms of convenience and profit." At this time, even William I agreed. Bismarck said, however, William IV naturally saw this point, but the Netherlands really did this, and obviously the purpose is not pure. What does the Prime Minister mean? Frederick asked puzzled. Bismarck, the Netherlands has greater ambitions. Perhaps the ultimate goal of William IV and his Dutch party is to combine the natives of Africa with the natives of Asia and South America to become the common overlord of the two oceans of the Indo-Pacific. Here is the data on the population of Asia and America that immigrated to Australia and the Dutch East Indies and other Pacific islands. Please take a look. Bismarck's words shocked everyone present, and then his eyes fell on the documents on his desk. William I took the data handed over by Bismarck and his eyes fell on it. In 1867, the number of Latin American immigrants to the far east of the Netherlands exceeded 50,000, of which the population with higher and secondary education accounted for 50% of the population, small capitalists and international students accounted for 30%, and the rest were their relatives with their families. William IV narrowed his eyes. The amount of information here is huge. You must know that Latin America has not reached the level of European countries in terms of economy, and it is considered a poor country in Europe. In such a poor place, there are more than 50,000 high-level people immigrating to the far east of the Netherlands. Isn't the far east of the Netherlands clearly harvesting leeks? William I, as an old fox who has been active in the political arena for many years, thought of a problem. That is, with these Latin American immigrants, these places will have the influence of the Netherlands at the top level in various countries. Rich and powerful people will put their relatives in the Netherlands, which is a kind of hostage. With this kind of hostage, the Netherlands will have more influence on South America. The consequence is, according to the data, in addition to Latin America, Asia seems to be the same. Even many European countries, especially Northern Europe, Eastern Europe and the Balkans, have a large number of immigrants. William I looked at Bismarck in horror. Others looked at the data in their hands one after another. Crown Prince Frederick was even more surprised and said, "The average annual number of Latin American immigrants is 50,000, with high net worth and rich family background. The same is true in various parts of Asia. There are more than 30,000 immigrants and international students every year. This provides the Netherlands with an advantage in gathering the yearning of people in these two places, and the Netherlands has become the center invisibly. European immigrants are obviously no longer the only immigration destination outside of Europe and North America. This is considered to be competing with the United States of America in North America for population immigration. Moreover, it is obvious that the civil war between the North and the South in the United States seems to be more in line with the European security concept of the Australian continent and the Dutch East Indies. At present, the number of European immigrants is more than 10,000 per year. The Netherlands is not small. Bismarck, the more intense the competition in Europe, the more people will run out of Europe. The current war in the Balkan Peninsula has made many people choose to immigrate. The cold weather in Northern Europe makes it difficult to live, which is also the main reason for immigration. The shortage of population in the Netherlands makes the Netherlands willing to absorb immigrants. Data shows that the total population of immigrants from Sweden, Norway and Denmark in Northern Europe who emigrated to the far east of the Netherlands since 1862 has exceeded 200,000. Under the Balkan Peninsula War and tensions, the population of immigrants to the far east of the Netherlands exceeded 300,000. This means that in addition to the 6 million Dutch white people in the Dutch Far East, there are also more than 1 million white immigrants from Europe and America. Looking at the lines in the data, immigration from these places is still on an upward trend, which shows that immigration to the Dutch Far East will continue to be a normal state in the future. Bismarck raised his head, and his majestic face showed an extremely sharp expression. He said, "Although the Netherlands is unlikely to threaten Prussia in Europe, we have to be careful of it damaging Prussia's interests in Africa and the Pacific and Indian Oceans." Crown Prince Frederick was stunned. It seems that there are not many major interests in Africa and the Indian Ocean. Although there is a colony in Somalia, it is also a barren land. However, it is better to have it than not. Bismarck's words disrupted his idea. He said, "We explored the Middle East with the Netherlands some time ago. At the border between our Middle Eastern colony Qatar and the United Arab Emirates, the exploration teams of the two countries received important energy news not long ago." Bismarck's words shocked people. Middle East? Exploration team. When these words were combined, William I's eyes suddenly shot out a compelling light. At this moment, the majesty of the King of the Kingdom of Prussia was revealed. He couldn't wait to ask nervously, "Is there any result in the oil exploration in the Middle East?" Oil. Crown Prince Frederick and Chief of the General Staff Moltke were stunned when they heard the words, and then they also showed shock on their faces. By the way, a few years ago, the Netherlands and Prussia jointly conducted oil exploration there. At that time, they didn't care that the Netherlands actually made such a request. They also mocked the Netherlands for choosing to explore in a barren place there, rather than Africa. But now they actually got the result from Bismarck? Oil. This is the goal that Prussia is trying to change Britain because of the first industrial development and to establish its own electrical industrial system. If it really exists, then for Prussia, it will definitely be a real advantage. Thinking of this, everyone couldn't help but look at Bismarck. Chapter 418, The British royal family's trump card is the Mellon family. London, England. Lionel Rothschild, the head of the Rothschild family, is meeting a distinguished guest. "Your Highness the Crown Prince came to visit me this time just to tell me that we should let go and work hard in North America." Lionel showed a strange look on his face. He didn't expect that Prince Edward, the Crown Prince of the British Empire, would come to their Rothschild family specifically to express his support for the Rothschild family to suppress the Dutch forces in North America. He sneered in his heart. According to what he heard, it seems that this Crown Prince seems to be competing with the King of the Netherlands for William IV, and resents William IV for taking away Alexandra, the original Danish princess? If so, it is easy to understand. However, will the British Crown Prince really fight to the death with a king of another country because of a woman? Lionel didn't believe it, but he felt more sad that Britain actually had such an ignorant Crown Prince. Thinking of this, he could not help but shift his gaze from Prince Edward to British Prime Minister Disraeli, who was visiting with him. Edward's suggestion was beyond his expectations, but he was even more surprised that Prince Edward came with Disraeli. Did the Tories really choose to support Prince Edward from the royal family as a breakthrough to improve their relationship with the royal family? I just don't know what Queen Victoria would think. Obviously, she shouldn't refuse. Lionel's eyes gleamed. No one would think that Queen Victoria was a stupid woman. On the contrary, she should be a role model for women in the world. At least in governing the country, most monarchs in the world can hardly compare with her. Even though the Rothschild family seems to be in great glory at the moment, Lionel still feels a kind of pressure in front of Queen Victoria, a middle-aged woman. It is the pressure from the superior. Yes, Lionel positioned himself as a family that has been promoted to the British aristocracy, but in front of the most noble Queen Victoria in the UK, he still needs to remain humble. Prime Minister Disraeli received Lionel's inquiry and said with a wry smile, "The influence of the Netherlands in North America is too great at present. The British cabinet government means that we need to use some tools to stop it. The Rothschild family in the UK is the best way for the UK to intervene in North America without undermining the Anglo-Dutch relationship." The Rothschild family in the UK? Private? Without undermining the Anglo-Dutch relationship? Lionel made a note of these words. What a great Prime Minister of the British Empire, saying it so openly. Does he want us to be the vanguard to embarrass the Netherlands? However, although this is what the Rothschild family is doing, the initiative is originally in our hands, but looking at Disraeli's intention, it seems that he wants to control it remotely. Everything has two sides, and with the participation of the British government, the pressure on the Rothschild family is naturally less. But on the contrary, profit has always been the ultimate goal of the Rothschild family. If the British government gets involved, there will be twists and turns to a certain extent, especially when there are too many aspects to take into account. Instead, they will be hesitant to do things. The Rothschild family and even the technology will miss the opportunity. This is possible in many cases. Because of this, he hesitated. Disraeli seemed to know what he was worried about, and said, "The Mellon family has always been very loyal to the British royal family. Lionel paused at first, then his whole body was shocked, and he looked at Disraeli in disbelief. He looked at Prince Edward again. Prince Edward was proud of this. "Look, I said that once the relationship between the Mellon family and the royal family is exposed, Lionel will definitely be shocked." He first showed off to Disraeli, then pretended to be calm and said, "The Mellon family is one of the royal family's trump cards in North America. Mr. Lionel, please try your best to help keep the secret, so that you can get the greatest effect. You should know that secret weapons can always use their power to the extreme." Lionel said excitedly, "Your Highness is talking about the Mellon family's influence in the United States of America, second only to the Randee family, the Morgan family and the Rockefeller family, ranking fourth there. It has always maintained a neutral policy and is impartial. It is a cohesive force in the middle in the United States. Even in the consortium, it is second only to the above three and the First Citibank Consortium and the Boston Consortium, ranking sixth. If people knew that they were secretly leaning towards us, it would definitely cause a storm in North America, and even cause a real earthquake in the political arena of the United States of America." Lionel looked at Crown Prince Edward with admiration, and tried to curry favor with him, saying, "I didn't expect the royal family to have such a trump card. It's really intimidating." Crown Prince Edward enjoyed the admiration from the head of the richest family in Britain, and said happily, "I don't know, how is the Rothschild family in North America dealing with the Dutch offensive?" Lionel looked troubled when he heard this. He sighed, "It's hard to explain. The Dutch have a huge influence in the United States of America and have a stable business. I don't know if I should say this or not. The Netherlands took advantage of the United States of America's fear of European powers. At the same time, immigrants from various countries who came to America had suffered a lot in their original countries before they immigrated there to live. So don't look at what the newspapers say about people of various ethnic groups supporting their leaders. In fact, I would say that this is all nonsense. Take the Germans as an example. Many of them share the same hatred and do not like the Prussians, because many immigrants immigrated after hating Prussia and annexing other countries in the German Confederation. Would a slave who was forced to leave his homeland support the new government that occupied his original country?" Crown Prince Edward was shocked. "Yes, since all countries are like that, then is the Netherlands lying? It seems that he knows what he is thinking." He shook his head and said, "Immigration in the Netherlands is voluntary, without coercion. For centuries, the East India Company has been developing its business layout. Therefore, everyone can see that on the streets of New York, almost many shop owners are operated by Dutch capital. The Dutch are also very united. When encountering problems, they will almost rush to help their ethnic group overcome difficulties. I heard that in the Netherlands, they have established many welfare institutions and foundations to help individuals and groups in need of help. In this way, they are expanding their influence in the United States. Therefore, in the United States, the Dutch not only do not hate their native land, but also strive to protect the interests of their native land. The Dutch, headed by President Andrew Johnson, are the leaders of these people. Of course, the Dutch have many hidden strengths." Disraeli suddenly said at this time, "Just like the Morgan family and Rockefeller family hidden by the Rothschild family." Lionel said, "Not bad. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 419 Gold Standard Monetary Policy. While Berlin and London were discussing the Dutch policy of integrating indigenous peoples, other places were also discussing the influence of the Netherlands. In short, the Dutch practice of integrating indigenous peoples has aroused the curiosity and ridicule of various countries, and they are all waiting to see what happens to the Netherlands. But William IV in Amsterdam, the capital of the Netherlands, was as calm as ever. He was convening this meeting of the Dutch Privy Council. Attending the meeting were Prime Minister Thorbecke and his cabinet members, Interior Minister General, Foreign Minister Gisbert van, Finance Minister Jan van Capello, Dutch Justice Minister Ross, Industry Minister Wim Coat, Education Minister Ruud Bels, Royal Netherlands Intelligence Director Bill Charlie, and Netherlands International Intelligence Director Mackay Sean. The military was Chief of Staff Mark Rude, Navy Minister Jan Peter, Army Minister Peter de Jong, Navy Chief of Staff Joseph Karls, Army Chief of Staff Job Hill, and Armaments Minister Louis Bell. At the Privy Council meeting, Finance Minister Jan van Capello was giving his detailed report. Many European countries and the Rothschild family are currently unaware that, in addition to the political layout they see, the Dutch are actually more concerned about the Dutch financial power in America. First of all, the Netherlands is challenging the gold standard and the First World Revolution. After experiencing the 9 Years' War from 1688 to 1698 and the War of the Spanish Succession from 1702 to 1713, Britain is facing high debts. The British government's tax revenue is barely enough to pay the interest on these debts. The country's public credit situation is worrying, and it has reached the point where it must find ways to reduce its debt. The ruling Tory party at the time implemented a debt-to-equity plan for the South Sea Company, a platform that assisted the government in financing, converting national debt into shares of the platform company, so that government creditors became shareholders of the platform company, and the national debt was therefore written off. This plan was welcomed by the British market. But Walpole, the first Prime Minister in British history in 1721, believed that this would be a dangerous speculative act that would kill the British business genius. It would be like a demon, making people sleep in the fantasy of wealth falling from the sky and no longer believe in solid labor. It would lead people astray. This plan is extremely evil in nature and will only make the masses fall into long-term madness and unable to extricate themselves. This story of the Chancellor of the Exchequer Jan van Capello made everyone present very quiet. In fact, many people also heard about the British financial transformation for the first time. Even William IV was the same. Finance Minister Jan van Capello said this seriously. The result was as he expected. The subsequent credit expansion in the UK caused the whole of the UK to fall into a frenzy, but crises followed one after another. In a letter to Lord Chancellor Middleton at the time, Broderick, a member of the House of Commons of the British Parliament, pointed out that the money supply was pushed to the limit, but there was not enough precious metal reserves to support it. No matter what the reason, once people's confidence is shaken, the entire monetary machine will immediately fail. Not long after the congressman said this, credit expansion was indeed weak and the bubble burst. Jan van Capello turned his eyes to everyone in the Privy Council, and finally said in a loud voice, "At present, the United States of America is promoting a new currency and national debt. In fact, it is not much different from the policy implemented by the United Kingdom back then. The difference is that internationalization is broader. International capital giants including the Rothschild family and the Netherlands are all involved. Therefore, there is an increase in uncertainty in the United States of America regarding national debt and currency issues." Back to the topic just now, the South China Sea incident in the early 18th century had a huge impact on Britain and even the world. It was because people generally believed that there was not enough precious metal reserves to support the currency issuance mechanism, which led to the culprit of the South China Sea incident bubble. So Britain began to find an anchor for currency issuance. In 1717, Newton suggested in a monetary report that the price of gold should be set at £3.17 and 10 pence per ounce of gold, laying a theoretical preliminary foundation for the gold standard relationship, and the United Kingdom thus led the way to the gold standard. The establishment of the gold standard undoubtedly locked the economy in the initial stage. But in the long run, it effectively avoided the lack of sufficient precious metal reserves to support the currency issuance mechanism, and then stabilized the currency and prices in Britain. It was this prudent and even tight monetary policy that laid the foundation for the outbreak of the First Industrial Revolution that originated in Britain. No one in the entire cabinet showed an impatient expression. Even the military representatives who were confused understood that this famous fiscal actuary in the Netherlands would have a purpose every time he released a government report. Sure enough, when they heard that the British gold standard was actually linked to the First World Industrial Revolution, they tried to make themselves more sober so as to integrate into the situation of the Netherlands. Finance Minister Jan van Capello said, in 1733, John Kay invented the flying shuttle. In 1765, James Hargreaves invented the Jenny spinning machine. In 1769, James Watt improved the steam engine. These are all symbols of Britain's entry into the First Industrial Revolution. These things do represent the rapid development of Britain's industrial economy. They have led the British economy to become the most prosperous economy in Europe for more than a century. A loose monetary policy environment is not a necessary condition for innovation or even prosperity. On the contrary, a tight monetary policy environment is more conducive to great innovation. After talking about the rise of the first industrial revolution in Britain, relying on the gold standard and monetary easing policies, let's take a look at the current industrial status and monetary policy in the world. According to what Your Majesty said before, we are currently at a critical moment in the second industrial revolution. Take the United States as an example. In order to cope with a huge war expenditure, the Lincoln government of the United States of America suspended the gold standard system in 1862 and began to increase the money supply sharply. By the end of the Civil War in 1866, the dollar price of gold was more than 50% higher than the official price. In October 1866, the Congress of the United States of America passed the Austerity Act. The Treasury Department then reduced the base currency by up to 20% for nearly a year. However, the fact that followed was that the United States of America unexpectedly maintained a medium to high growth rate. From July 1866 to June 1868, the growth rate of the United States of America remained at an average annual rate of 4%–5%. In these 7 years, due to the tight monetary policy of the Lincoln government, the price level in the United States dropped by half. At the same time, the economy grew rapidly. The simultaneous appearance of the two made us doubt the correctness of the widely accepted view that tight currency and rapid economic growth cannot coexist. He smiled and said, "It was during this period that the Americans tightened their policies and the Dutch migrated to the Far East and took over the leadership of the Second Industrial Revolution from Germany, led by Prussia." Chapter 420 Military-Civilian Integration. Finance Minister Jan van Capel said this with excitement. With the Netherlands' position in the Second World Industrial Revolution established, the Netherlands has relied on its own strength to surpass the Kingdom of Prussia and the United Kingdom together with the United States of America and become the leader of the Second Industrial Development. William IV nodded and thought of the United States. Historically, Prussia was the pioneer of the Second Industrial Development before the 1860s and 1870s, but was eventually surpassed by the United States. Historically, the United States achieved the world's first industrial country in 1894, the year of the First and Second World Wars, with an industrial output value of about $14 billion, surpassing the old colonial empires of Britain and France. Of course, this was because the United States was the first to embrace the Second Industrial Revolution at that time, and electrification was widely used, which directly achieved overtaking on the curve. Similar countries to the United States include the emerging power Prussia, called Germany after 1871. Until later, as we know, the national fortune of the United States is getting better and better. It made a fortune in World War I and World War II, and also took advantage of these opportunities to become a true world hegemon. Thinking of this, William IV asked the Minister of Industry, Wim Cotter, what is the current industrial status of the Netherlands? Currently, the industrial economy of the Netherlands ranks 5th in the world. In terms of industrial economy alone, the Netherlands is on par with the United Kingdom. In particular, in terms of heavy industry, we are the world leader. Prussia is the challenger. In terms of light industry, our opponents are the United Kingdom and the United States. He nodded, and then asked the Minister of Agriculture, Gates, about the situation of agriculture. Gates said, in terms of agriculture, the main opponents are France and the two countries after the split of the United States. In the eastern part of the Australian continent and the Netherlands, this is the core area of agricultural production in the Netherlands. The main agricultural products include corn, wheat, etc. The amazing agricultural output in these places has been hailed as the world's granary, making the Netherlands one of the world's largest exporters of agricultural products last year. In the Dutch East Indies, sugar, tobacco, and palm oil are the world's top production areas. Agriculture and food are the foundation of the country. Keeping the Dutch people well fed and clothed is the most fundamental, so that more energy can be put into the industrial aspects of economic sublimation. Therefore, it is necessary to ensure that all Dutch people have their own rice bowls to eat, and it is in their own hands. Agricultural Minister Gates naturally nodded in response. Seeing this, William IV asked Finance Minister Jan van Capel about the development of the industrial economy and the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Finance. Finance Minister Jan van Capel said, from 1857 to 1867, there was the first wave of mergers and acquisitions. Many large companies were born. The Dutch Steel Union is composed of more than 300 large and small steel companies, accounting for more than 65% of the output in the United States. William Steel, Another name for the Dutch East India Company Steel Company, is the world's largest company, accounting for the remaining 35% of the output of the Dutch steel industry, and is the world's largest steel company. There are also the Dutch East India Company and Edison's newly established General Electric Company, the Dutch Gunpowder Company, etc., which have each become the world's largest companies in various fields. Moreover, the birth of many giants is under the leadership of the Dutch East India Company. The growth of various industries in the Netherlands is rapid, and one or two have become giants in the same industry in the world. The Netherlands currently has rich mineral resources, especially in the Far East, including the Golden Belt in the north of the Australian continent, oil, iron ore, coal mines, etc. Whether it is light industry or heavy industry, the Netherlands needs to develop, especially in the electrical field, which will be the most important way for the future economic development of the Netherlands. We must develop in this direction firmly so as not to fall behind. Facts have proved that the rise of Prussia, the United States and the Netherlands were all due to electrification. Therefore, in terms of industry, the research and development of electric motors and other things must be a protracted war, and we cannot relax even a little bit. William IV said to Prime Minister Thorbecke, "In this regard, I think we should implement a military-civilian integration policy." Military-civilian integration? Not only was Thorbecke confused, but even the people around him were very confused, because the term was so unfamiliar that it had no effect at all. William IV said, "Military-civilian integration is currently unheard of in the world. This is a new term I invented. In my opinion, the Netherlands should establish a national defense science and technology system to promote the integration of military and civilian applications." Military-civilian integration is mainly divided into two meanings. The first is military to civilian, which means that military technology is used in civilians. In this regard, the use of advanced military steam engines on sea freight ships can give us a glimpse. The second is civilian participation in the military, that is, the participation of private entities in the military industry market. This provides a solution to the dilemma of the Netherlands Ministry of Defense in reducing major capital investment. The Netherlands Ministry of Defense only needs to formulate a direction or a field that needs to be broken through, and the Dutch civilian military industry will invest in it to break through. The Ministry of Defense will place an order to obtain the research and development results of the project and even manufacture finished products. In this way, the funds of the Netherlands Ministry of Defense can be used for other projects that are more cutting edge. As William IV spoke, the entire Privy Council was shocked. In this way, the pressure on the Dutch Ministry of Finance was much less, and the Minister of Finance Jan van Capello was immediately excited. And other military personnel were even more excited. If the Ministry of Finance reduces pressure, then the military will naturally be able to come up with more plans for the project. It seems that projects that were previously unthinkable are no longer constrained by funds after William IV's statement. Military-industrial complexes have accumulated rich industrial resources in their long development, while civilian enterprises have the advantages of being more flexible and innovative. If the two sides deeply integrate, they can achieve a win-win situation, said Prime Minister Thorbecke, commenting on William IV's statement of military-civilian integration. William IV smiled and said, "On the one hand, through the deep integration of military and civilian, we can activate the stock assets, attract various channels to support the security field of the Netherlands, promote development and innovation, and accelerate the upgrading of weapons and equipment in the Netherlands. On the other hand, we can solve the efficiency problem of the original Dutch military industrial assets and build an operating system led by the Netherlands, driven by demand, operated by the market, and deeply integrated with the military and civilian sectors. It can change from the original blood transfusion to blood production and promote the upgrading of the entire Dutch military industry. I have data evaluation in my hand. If the military-civilian integration policy is successfully implemented, then the project can save at least 1/4 of the budget of the Dutch Ministry of Defense every year. More than 1/4? 25%? The impact of this data is too great. At present, the defense budget of the Netherlands is growing rapidly every year. Due to the need to increase on the Australian continent, the current military expenditure of the Netherlands exceeds £10 million. According to this statement, the savings can exceed £2.5 million. You must know that the construction cost of a steam battleship is only hundreds of thousands of pounds. It is almost the scale of more than a dozen or 20 battleships. Just thinking about it shocked the entire Privy Council. Chapter 421, Australia's Unknown Cycling Army. When everyone in the military was happy about the possible savings of such a large amount of military expenses, William Ivey asked, "How is the current military strength of the military?" His eyes were on Mark Rutte, the chief of the Dutch General Staff. At present, the military strength of the Netherlands is developing rapidly. The surface tonnage of the Navy remains at about 250,000 tons, which is already on par with the French Empire. The United Kingdom has reached 300,000 tons. Specifically, the British steam battleships have been manufactured for 7 ships, and the French Empire has 5 ships. The Netherlands stated that there are 4 ships, of which 2 are deployed in the mainland and 2 in the Far East. In fact, we have manufactured and deployed more than 10 ships in the Far East. Oh, William Ivey asked, how to deploy? The Jakarta is deployed in Jakarta, the capital of the Dutch East Indies, and the Paradise Peninsula is also at the largest naval base in the Far East on the Paradise Peninsula of New Guinea Island. In the South Pacific Islands east of the Australian mainland, we have deployed the Fiji on Fiji Island. In the Hawaiian Islands, the Pearl Harbor and Hawaii are deployed to guard there. On the Australian continent, the Sydney and Melbourne were deployed in Sydney Harbour to guard the entire eastern part of the Australian continent, and the Perth was also deployed in Perth in the west. So, there are 8 steam battleships deployed in the entire Far East? It's luxurious, William Ivey exclaimed. You should know that the 6 major fleets of Britain, originally 7 fleets, because Australia no longer exists, so the Australian fleet is missing, have a total of 7 ships. It is said that the entire Indian Ocean Fleet is second only to the Atlantic Fleet in the mainland, and there are only 2 steam battleships. The Atlantic Fleet in the mainland has only 2 ships, the North Sea Fleet has 1 ship, the Mediterranean Fleet and the Canadian Fleet have 1 ship each, and the South African Fleet has 2 ships, or even none. And there are 8 ships in the Far East of the Netherlands, including 2 in the Hawaiian Fleet, which is really strong. What about the Army? The strong development of the Navy's strength naturally conforms to William Ivey's idea. After all, in the 21st century, the Navy is still the most powerful symbol of a great power. The number of Army population can be vague, but the tonnage of the Navy is real. Otherwise, why is the United States so powerful in the future? It is because its 7 aircraft carrier fleets dominate the world. When something happens, all countries will first think of where the U.S. aircraft carriers are. This is what they said 150 years later, let alone now. Therefore, the development of the Navy is still one of the main directions of the Netherlands' military strength in the 19th century and even the future of the 20th century. When the Minister of the Army, Peter de Jong, saw William Ivey asking, he said, "At present, the regular army of the Netherlands is 168,000, the one-year conscript army is more than 50,000, and the native army is more than 120,000. That is to say, a total of more than 338,000 soldiers? Add nearly 400,000 Navy? Is 400,000 soldiers a lot for a population of 32 million? In this era, it is actually not much. Especially when wars are frequent in Europe and the world is not peaceful at all. You should know that the French Empire has 500,000 regular troops, and other types of conscripts and reserve troops can be mobilized at will. Millions can be mobilized at will. Sweden has a population of 7.5 million and a regular army of more than 200,000. Sweden implements a system of conscripts for all people, and is on guard against the Russian Empire. If a war really breaks out, Karl XV can instantly mobilize more than 1 million troops, and they are all trained. This is also the reason why the Russian Empire did not dare to do anything to Sweden for decades, as the Russian Empire far exceeds the Swedish population and the land is incomparable. Alexander II and his father Nicholas I would rather attack the Ottoman Empire in the Middle East than fire at Sweden. It is really that the Swedish people are too militarized. In fact, the country still has a system of all soldiers until the 21st century. Coupled with the cold weather and the geographical location that is easy to defend and difficult to attack, Sweden's local military defense measures are even more shocking, so Northern Europe is almost a forbidden area for major military powers. In this case, the size of the Dutch army of 400,000 is actually not much. After all, this is a country with tens of millions of square kilometers that needs to be guarded. The geographical location of the Netherlands is also destined to require so many troops to guard. This is why William Ivey needs the native army. They can fight at the front and defend the country at home. Although their combat effectiveness remains to be seen, The data of 100,000 soldiers is a shocking data for Europe. Compared with the current 80,000 Danish soldiers, this has already touched the total number of Danish soldiers. Your Majesty, the Dutch army has all been replaced with Mauser rifles, and with the development of the military industry, many of our equipment have been implemented with the most advanced equipment. It can be said that if we are currently ranked according to the ranking of European countries, our equipment dares to say that we are second, and no army dares to say that they are first. William IV didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The equipment in the Dutch army is the most advanced and the most luxurious in Europe. The Dutch army can be said to be built with money. No country can be like the Netherlands, which uses defense expenses to arm itself to the top, and even begins to develop bulletproof equipment for protection. Therefore, the equipment of the Netherlands can be said to be very regrettable. By the way, how about the new soldiers trained by the army recently? New soldiers? Many cabinet members looked at William IV in confusion. When did the Netherlands get a new soldier? How come they didn't know about it? If so, what type of soldier is it? The military is keeping secrets more and more. According to Your Majesty's instructions, we have currently mobilized more than 3 divisions and 30,000 people to conduct military training there. All 3 divisions have completed Your Majesty's new military training, and the results are all good. William IV seemed to see the doubts of many people in the cabinet, so he explained, the new military force currently being implemented in the Netherlands is the Bicycle Corps. Bicycle Corps? Everyone was shocked by William IV's words. Yes, bicycles are light and convenient. They can be folded into a small steel body and carried on people's shoulders. They can also be opened and ridden on narrow paths. Because of their pulling function, they can also be used as a team to help pull ammunition and guns to the front line. Compared with warhorse teams, they need much less maintenance, and they don't need to be fed like horses, and they are not afraid of bicycles getting sick. When walking in the tropical rainforest in the Far East, as long as the vanguard opens a small 1-meter path in front, it is enough for the bicycle army to move forward. Therefore, the development of the bicycle army will be enough to change the rules of the battlefields of war in Europe and even the world. Everyone, just watch, the world will definitely be scared by the bicycle army in the future. Minister of the Interior John Lahr slapped his thigh hard and suddenly realized, no wonder Your Majesty has always supported bicycle events in the country and the Far East. After all this time, it turns out that all this is prepared for the bicycle army. After he reminded the others, they reacted. It's true. Chapter 422, The Deployment of the Dutch Army. Using bicycles to help infantry move quickly is a very good solution. In World War II, when Japan raided the British colony of Malaysia, this method was used to follow the chariot troops. The Japanese army riding bicycles made the British army in Malaysia terrified. William IV asked the Minister of the Interior, General, what is the most important tool for the Dutch army's mobility now? Cavalry. Yes, cavalry has been the most important tool for the army in Europe for hundreds and thousands of years, but horses are notoriously difficult to deal with, and they also need corresponding cavalry. William IV especially remembered that in the early days of World War II, when the German army invaded Poland, France and other countries, Germany's mechanization level was relatively low, and the mobility of the troops was relatively poor. The main reason was that the Versailles Treaty signed after losing the First World War limited the resources of the German army, especially in terms of mobility. In the early days of the war, the German army's actions often relied on walking to solve problems. But the Germans at the time knew that you couldn't do this. How could the troops fight and the speed be reduced? So the Germans also tried every means to increase the mobility of the troops and tried every means to add mobility to the starting price of the troops that could add mobility. Due to the limited number of cars produced and the stock of fuel at that time, the German army was forced to add some non-motorized vehicles to participate in the war, such as mules and horses, such as bicycles. Therefore, riding a bicycle is easier to operate than riding a horse. William II asked the Minister of War Peter de Jong, how is the current Dutch bicycle army planned? The German army's bicycles can be traced back to the early days of World War I. At that time, the Germans ruled by William II also knew that riding a bicycle was always faster than running. Currently, there is a bicycle brigade in every light infantry division of the Netherlands in the Far East. The Dutch army is currently organized into a squad of about 10 people, 3 squads form a platoon of about 30 people, and 3 platoons plus cooks, signalmen, quartermasters, deputy platoon leaders, instructors, pastors, etc., totaling about 110 people. 3 companies form a battalion of about 400 people, a regiment has 1,300 people, a brigade has about 4,000 people, a division has about 7,500 to 10,000 people. A corps is about 30,000 people. The Netherlands has 2 armies with 60,000 people, 30,000 conscripts, and another 30,000 native troops deployed on the mainland. More than 120,000 troops are deployed on the mainland to guard the mainland. There are more than 20,000 Navy troops in the Atlantic, totaling 140,000. The Far East also has more than 30,000 Navy troops, 60,000 Army troops, and more than 30,000 native troops, totaling 140,000. There are 5,000 troops and 2,000 Navy troops on the Alaska Peninsula. The Hawaiian Islands also deployed 5,000 ground forces and 3,000 Navy forces. A total of 15,000 people. More than 10,000 Navy forces were deployed in Madagascar, Mozambique, Tanzania and Kenya, and more than 5,000 people were deployed at the mouth of the Congo River. There are more than 20,000 Dutch troops stationed on Madagascar Island and more than 30,000 indigenous troops. There are more than 30,000 indigenous troops in Congo, Tanzania and Kenya, and more than 30,000 Dutch troops. This is the deployment of the 400,000 Dutch troops. This deployment is in place, but are the local indigenous troops still stable? It has to be said that William IV is also a common problem for people in later generations. Those who are not of my race must have different hearts. Although this sentence is crude, it is indeed very appropriate. What's more, in William IV's mind, if these indigenous people will come with a wave of self-reliance in the future, whether they can withstand provocation is still unknown. Therefore, all that William IV is doing now is actually slowly and silently changing these people to Africa. Even if many Dutch nobles were worried, if there was a mutiny someday, the worst that could happen was that the Netherlands would give them a piece of land in Africa to establish a country. As for the Far East and the Australian continent, that was out of the question. Of course, these were concessions that would only be made at the last step. It was far from being a crisis at the moment. It's a good thing to use bicycles in warfare. Reconnaissance and communication can be done on a large scale. Bicycles are good because they don't need to be fed with feed or water, and they don't need special troops. Moreover, many people can ride bicycles directly, but many people have to learn to ride horses, and they may not be able to ride them. After sighing, the Chief of Staff of the Dutch military, Mark Rutte, said seriously, "In fact, when I first became Prime Minister a few years ago, I realized that future European wars would require very high mobility of the army. We must abandon traditional combat concepts and increase the mobility of the army to the greatest extent possible. The Netherlands must move quickly when the army is fighting. The army must quickly reach the war zone and quickly engage in combat." He pointed out that the 1st Brigade of each infantry division must be equipped with a bicycle regiment, and each regiment must have a combat reconnaissance unit, either equipped with horses or bicycles. However, horses are indeed too difficult to take care of, especially in Africa where there are many deserts and horses are difficult to transfer. Raising horses in the tropical zones of the Far East is also a hard job, and bicycles are much easier in this regard. Therefore, I suggest that all infantry brigades, regiments and grassroots companies should be equipped with bicycles. After that, William IV began to seriously understand how the current bicycles in the Netherlands were organized. Mark Rutte told him that Europe remained unchanged. The reconnaissance battalion in the current Dutch Far East Infantry Division included a battalion headquarters, a bicycle company, a cavalry company, a heavy weapons platoon and a communications platoon. Even many cavalry companies in the Far East have been replaced by bicycle companies. A bicycle infantry platoon includes 3 squads, each with a squad leader and a deputy squad leader, a 7-man rifle team, and a 4-man machine gun team. As for machine guns, the current Dutch Ministry of Defense has obtained the patent for the multi-barreled hand-crank machine gun invented by American R.J. Gatling in 1862 with the help of the Dutch people in the United States. In 1864, the Netherlands had already begun to produce its own machine guns and had its own machine gun production factory. After many modifications, in 1866, Nant Maxim, a mechanical professor at the Royal Netherlands Academy of Sciences, developed the 11.43mm Maxim heavy machine gun based on his work. It was the world's first machine gun that used gunpowder gas energy to complete the design cycle, which immediately caused a sensation in the world. Before Germany was defeated in the war, The German People's Grenadiers also included bicycle companies and bicycle battalions. Most of these bicycle companies were used as reconnaissance units, and some were used as combat units. After all, it was faster to go to the war zone by bicycle. Chapter 423. Two major factions in the Netherlands. Prime Minister Thorbecke also agreed at this time. It is also good for the Dutch army to switch to bicycles. Soldiers do not need to be trained to ride horses. Many people can ride bicycles when they join the army. Moreover, the biggest advantage is that 90% of the world's bicycle production comes from the Dutch East India Company. We have a grasp of the global bicycle trends. With this advantage, the Dutch Army's bicycle motorization will also be the fastest in the world. Therefore, we are using our strengths to further improve our military construction. As I said just now, soldiers can ride before joining the army. The troops do not need to prepare too much feed, veterinary medicine, etc., and the maintenance cost is low. In combat, when the battle starts, these bicycle soldiers, like some special forces, will put away their vehicles and then go into battle. They can fight after getting off the bicycle. It is convenient and simple. William IV smiled and nodded. There are no airplanes in the world at present. If these people in front of him knew that bicycles can be used in addition to infantry units to form Air Force bicycle parachute companies, they will definitely be scared to death. Your Majesty, I have a question. Everyone was quiet. William IV saw that the person asking the question was Ruud Belz, the Minister of Education. He smiled and said, "Ask." I think the effect of our Army's bicycle unit should be different. How do you say that? Army Minister Peter de Jong asked anxiously. William IV and Thorbecke were stunned at first, then thought about it. The Chief of Staff Mark Ruud next to them was the same. The three looked at each other and nodded. Ruud Belz said, "I think this is mainly due to the battlefield." William IV showed a look of as expected. Seeing this, Education Minister Ruud Belz realized that several people had understood his thoughts. He said, "The Netherlands and some places in Australia are not so bad, because the road conditions in these places are relatively good. For example, the cycling events currently being built in these places in the Netherlands, in order to save costs, the capitalists all choose those areas that are as flat as walking on the ground for repairs. Although it sounds ugly to be called saving, it sounds nice to say that the places that save money and make money are the tricks for their investment. But from a more consistent point of view, their choice is also a problem we need to consider when building a bicycle force. The roads in these places are well paved, and the road network is relatively developed, so riding a bicycle is still relatively effective. But some places, such as the Alaska Peninsula and Greenland, are either frozen or raining all the time, and the road conditions in these places will become more muddy as it snows. At this time, the bicycles will slip or get stuck in the snow, becoming a burden, and now they are not as comfortable as cavalry. However, despite this, the establishment of the bicycle army is mainly due to the fact that the Netherlands has an advantage in horse supply and bicycles. Therefore, I have no intention of opposing the establishment of a bicycle army. I just remind you that this is a problem. Papa William IV took the lead in applauding and said, "This doubt is not bad. This kind of problem is crucial for us to improve our weaknesses. Therefore, in the future, the Far East will begin to put road construction on the agenda. As for places such as the Alaska Peninsula and Greenland, it is difficult to implement bicycle armies." As the topic of the bicycle army ended, the entire army discussion also came to an end. At this time, William IV looked at the Minister of the Navy, Jan Peter. In addition to the 10 steam battleships, what about our other treasures in the Netherlands? Treasures? Jan Peter was stunned at first, and then realized what Your Majesty was talking about. Currently, the Netherlands has built more than 30 submarines in the Far East. However, Your Majesty, there is currently a situation where two heroes compete for the hegemony of submarines in the Netherlands, which makes it very difficult for the military to deal with it. William IV was very surprised. The story of the two heroes in the Dutch submarine world? Jan Peter began to explain that in 1864, Holland, a 27-year-old famous submarine expert from the United States, was funded by the Irish at the beginning of his many submarine tests in the United States. However, after each funding, they would be extremely picky about Holland, and even mocked Holland's submarine as a waste in the sea, and finally cut off Holland's food supply. Holland was naturally unwilling, so he looked for an employer in the United States to invest in his submarine plan, but no one was interested in his underwater project. At this time, In early February of the spring of 1865, he heard a piece of news that the Netherlands was recruiting talents for underwater projects in the Far East. And the project also pointed out that the purpose was to deal with the submarine project of the Dutch William Group. From the time this recruitment news spread to the United States, and then he learned about it, he learned that Gerrit de Vries, the former famous submarine expert of the French Empire, had immigrated to the Netherlands as early as 1861 and became the head of the Dutch William Group's submarine project, and had already achieved some success. The underwater project recruited this time was the submarine development expert of the Dutch Far East Weapons Group, the second largest steel group and weapons company in the Netherlands, the old rival of the Dutch East India Company, William Group. Holland encountered many setbacks in the United States. Although the submarine he invented had gained a lot of fame, these achievements and fame did not bring him any benefits. Due to the prejudice and pickiness of some officials in the U.S. Navy, the new submarine plan he had in mind was not adopted by the U.S. Navy. Instead, this famous submarine expert in the United States was viciously ridiculed. The ruthless blow made Holland, who was less than 30 years old, resign in anger and choose to jump to the Netherlands and come to Port Adelaide, the largest naval industrial base on the Australian continent in the Far East. Speaking of this, you have to say that the two major naval manufacturing contractors in the Netherlands are the Dutch East India Company, the predecessor of the William Group, and the Dutch Far East Weapons Company, which has risen in the past decade. The Dutch East India Company's base in the Far East is mainly built in the Bourao Bay of the Paradise Peninsula on the island of New Guinea. The main base of the Dutch Far East Weapons Company's weapons manufacturing is built in Adelaide, the capital of South Australia Province in the southern part of the Australian continent. William IV of the Dutch East India Company, William Group, holds a 50% stake, while the Dutch Far East Arms Company is a newly rising upstart in the Dutch military industry chain, and William IV naturally also has a stake. The company employs former employees of the Dutch cabinet. Unlike the Dutch East India Company, which has always supported liberals in Dutch politics, the Dutch Far East Arms Company has always had close contacts with another conservative political party in the Netherlands, the Christian Party. The 7 provincial officials of the Netherlands in the Far East, all former Dutch prime ministers, are also divided into different camps. Former Prime Minister and senior official of the province of William, formerly Victoria, Chancellor Van Hall belongs to the Liberal faction and concurrently serves as Deputy Prime Minister, assisting Prime Minister Thorbecke in managing the Far East and concurrently serving as a senior official of the province of Tasmania. Chapter 424. The distribution of the two Dutch factions in the Far East. Former Dutch Prime Minister Gerrit Simopounek, who also belongs to the Dutch Liberal Party, was appointed as a senior official in Western Australia. Justin van der Bruggen is a Christian. He is a senior official in Northern Australia. In addition to the economic development direction that has been arranged long ago, his mission also requires Bruggen to assist missionaries in promoting Protestantism to the indigenous people and enhance the recognition of the Dutch. He is also William IV's right-hand man who wants to use his Christian connections to transform the beliefs of the Far East indigenous people. Jacob de is a Liberal former Dutch Prime Minister. He was appointed by William IV as a senior official in Queensland Province to develop agriculture and ensure the food and food processing industry in the Far East. In order to maintain a balance, the former Christian Prime Minister Jacob van Leuven was arranged to be a senior official in New South Wales Province between Queensland Province and William Province, formerly Victoria State, to develop the financial industry and manufacturing business. Sydney, the largest city on the Australian continent, is the capital of the province. Former Prime Minister Jane Jacob Broekhuizen, a conservative and Christian, became a senior official in South Australia Province to develop the military industry and shipbuilding industry. He is the most staunch supporter of the Dutch Far East Weapons Company. He governs the province of South Australia, and the capital city of Adelaide is the headquarters of the company. In contrast, the former Prime Minister Sherwold van Heemstra, a staunch liberal, governs New Guinea, the Maluku Islands, the South Pacific Islands, and the Hawaiian Islands. The Paradise Peninsula on New Guinea is the headquarters of the Dutch East India Company's weapons manufacturing in the Far East. The former governor of the East Indies, Bismarck, who has a non-partisan background, was appointed as a senior official in the East Indies by William IV. Everything needs to be balanced, and William IV naturally understands this truth better. In fact, seriously speaking, the company was also a product he used to check and balance the Dutch East India Company. After all, many people in it were still dissatisfied with him. Therefore, over the years, the development of the Dutch Far East Weapons Company was actually secretly supported by him, and everyone in the Dutch East India Company knew this. After Holland was recruited by the Dutch Far East Arms Company, from 1865 to 1867, Holland succeeded in the Far East Arms Group with sufficient funds and technology. On November 17, 1867, he finally developed and manufactured the Holland VI submarine, named after him for the Far East Arms Company. The submarine is 15 meters long, equipped with a 331,000 horsepower, about 45 horsepower, gasoline engine and an electric motor powered by a battery. It is the latest submarine with dual propulsion. When sailing on the surface, it is powered by a gasoline engine and can reach a speed of 7 nautical miles per hour with a cruising range of 1,000 nautical miles. When diving underwater, it is powered by an electric motor and can reach a speed of 5 nautical miles per hour with a cruising range of 50 nautical miles. The submarine has a total of 5 crew members, and its weapons are a submarine bow launch tube with a total of 3 torpedoes and 2 guns, 1 forward and 1 backward. The gun aims at the target by manipulating the submarine hull. The submarine can launch torpedoes underwater, sails in a balanced manner on the water, dives quickly, and is flexible. Navy Minister Jan Peter sighed. It is said that the next-generation submarine diver of the Far East Weapons Company led by Holland sailed from Adelaide, South Australia to Sydney Harbour, New South Wales, relying only on its own power, becoming the first submarine of the Far East Weapons Company to sail on the high seas. The submarine is driven by a 22-kilowatt, 30-horsepower, gasoline engine, whether it is sailing underwater or on the surface. Since the gasoline engine needs air to work, Lake installed an air intake and exhaust pipe that can extend out of the water on the submarine. At the same time, solid ballast was eliminated, and the ballast tank was used to drive the submarine to sink and float. In order to improve the seaworthiness of the submarine, Holland wrapped the air intake and exhaust pipes with a shell, so that the submariner has a second shell. After the modification, the submariner is more stable in buoyancy and sinking, and can extend the snorkel used by the internal combustion engine when working underwater at an appropriate depth, thereby extending the submarine's underwater stay time. William IV suddenly asked, I remember that the submarine grid invented by Gerrit de Vries of the Dutch East India Company uses a diesel-electric dual propulsion system, with a surface speed of 10 to 15 knots, an underwater speed of 6-8 knots, a cruising range of 500 nautical miles, and its main weapons are also artillery, mines and torpedoes. Your Majesty, it seems that you are still leaning towards the Dutch East India Company this time? However, when Navy Minister Jan Peter nodded and just thought so, William IV's words surprised him. Although it seems that the diesel engine plus electric motor dual thrust system is better, the Netherlands cannot have a monopoly. Therefore, you can place an order with the Netherlands Far East Weapons Company. Well, let's order 10 ships as a unit and try it out. William IV looked at the surprised expressions of several people and smiled. You should know that I always like to support the weak. William IV's words seemed to have deep meaning. Even Prime Minister Thorbecke frowned. Could it be that in the next Dutch general election, Your Majesty wants to support the Christian faction? William IV looked at several people meaningfully, but did not say it out loud. On August 28, 1868, President Andrew Johnson of the United States of America stated in Washington that the United States of America is committed to defending its democratic principles and values. As a sovereign and independent country, the United States of America can freely decide which countries or regions to develop economic and cultural relations with. The United States of America will not allow other countries to dictate to them or teach them how to interact with other countries. The United States of America does not need such a mentor. In this regard, British Foreign Secretary Russell of the Foreign Office in London said on August 29 that the United States of America stated that the country would defend its own principles and values while defending its own interests. If the United States of America can, then Britain can and should certainly defend Britain's own interests more firmly, especially when it comes to the United States of America where President Andrew is located. It just occupied the British overseas North American Canadian territory of British Columbia not long ago. After the core interests of Britain's territorial sovereignty were violated, we need to express our dissatisfaction. In this regard, President Andrew Johnson said, it must be pointed out that the United States of America is trying to replace the pillars and concepts and will provoke a principle of the United States of America disguised as a maintenance of the so-called core interests of the British Empire. It wants to interfere in the internal affairs of the United States of America. This can only deceive itself. President Andrew said that the United States of America is very vigilant against Britain. We will not let European forces easily interfere in the internal affairs of the United States of America. We do not want forces from Europe to interfere in our country, whether openly or secretly. Many people are puzzled by the sudden diplomatic clash between Britain and the United States. Wasn't it calm before? Only a few people know that this is because of the recent news that the British government supports the Rothschild family to expand its influence in the United States. Obviously, President Andrew is warning Britain not to act rashly, and at the same time, he is also implicitly warning other countries not to follow suit and interfere in U.S. affairs. Chapter 425. Safe and secure for the next 50 years. In a huge manner in the United States, this is a gathering place for high-level Prussians. Of course, the owner of this manor is Seward, the former Secretary of State of the United States. He is talking to his staff and Germans led by Prussians about the threats posed by Britain and the Rothschild family. At present, President Andrew's background as a Dutch descent is his biggest advantage. If you observe carefully, you will find that around President Andrew, more than half of them have a Dutch descent, and the remaining people are related to the Netherlands or to these Dutch descents. Even the most important positions in the U.S. cabinet, such as the Secretary of Finance and the Secretary of State, are controlled by the Dutch. So now, in fact, some forces in the United States can no longer stop them from developing their power. Such an idea has been unacceptable after Lincoln was impeached and assassinated. Didn't you see that even the Germans led by the Irish and Prussians who Lincoln had mobilized them to find it difficult to shake the position of the Dutch in the United States? Even many Americans now know that it is not good for the Dutch to develop their power alone, and the strength of the Dutch in the major private financial groups in the United States is also the top existence in the United States, but many people have seen that the Dutch are still developing there. Even this time, the Rothschild family, the most powerful financial family in Europe, attacked the United States again and again, and the strong resistance of the Dutch made the Rothschild family return home again and again. Moreover, the Dutch were smart in publishing the process and results time and again, which made them the patron saint of the United States and the heroes who protected the country in the hearts of the American people. These things are reflected in the support of the Dutch political career and the expansion of the consortium by the American people. According to the propaganda of the Dutch, as long as the Dutch local consortium continues to be strong, the foreign families in Europe can remain defeated and the United States can be spared from being colonized by European financiers. Although this statement is far-fetched, it is very effective. Moreover, at present, it seems that only the Dutch can achieve this anti-European role and ability in the United States. Moreover, many people know that the Kingdom of the Netherlands is one of the few countries in Europe that is not controlled by the Rothschild family to issue its currency and treasury bonds. The Dutch ruling is effective in learning from the Netherlands. It is precisely because the media controlled by the Dutch effectively guides public opinion to develop in this way. Therefore, many people in the United States now agree that the U.S. government is close to the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and it seems that they want to keep each other warm. Therefore, the practice of the United States in cooperating with the Netherlands in the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans in the past few years has received less opposition in the United States. Now that the Dutch Andrew has gone from vice president to president, the relationship between the two countries has been further improved. This makes the Dutch become the most powerful ethnic group in the United States. Such a force cannot be shaken in the United States. If it is given away, it will be a big trouble. Just look at the current distribution of forces and strength in the United States. Edwin Stanton, Secretary of War of the United States of America, Prussian; William Sherman, Deputy Commander of the United States of America in the American Civil War, second only to Grant; Prussian; Elihu B. Washburn, Secretary of the Interior of the United States of America, Irish. Andrew should not care too much about us, and to be honest, the Rothschild family that he wants to defeat the most is the ultimate important thing. When the Rothschild family is really driven out of the United States of America, we will then become the opponent of President Andrew. At present, it seems that we are only secondary, but during this period of time, we have taken advantage of the competition between the Dutch and the Rothschild family to integrate other ethnic groups that are dissatisfied with the dominance of the Dutch. It is a good opportunity. After Seward listed his dissatisfaction with the Dutch people to the three people, they finally dispersed. Andrew is still Andrew. When he was running for the Senate in Tennessee, we were the opponents of the Democratic Party he represented. But after he switched to the Republican Party in 1857, we began to talk about the Republican Party and then had close contact with the entire Republican Party. He successfully brought the first Dutch-American financial group, the Randi family financial group, closer to the Republican camp and finally helped Lincoln become the first president to be successfully elected by the Republican Party. Andrew became the vice president because of this. After that, he kept silent under the shining light of Lincoln. I really thought he had changed his temperament, but I didn't expect that he was hiding it in his heart. Everything was just a cover-up. Seward was very upset about Andrew's rise, and even blamed himself for not taking the lead in using the advantages of the Prussians and the entire Germans to suppress the other side, as well as Washburn and Lincoln, although he had always expressed no hostility towards the Germans and Prussians. Even after Lincoln was assassinated, although he still represented the friendship between the Irish and Prussians as always, he would occasionally express his dissatisfaction with his own tricks. Well, this time Andrew brought the Dutch to occupy an important position in the U.S. government cabinet, which could help him see the essence of the situation while using this to look down on the growing mix of good and bad people at the top of the U.S. Just now, when Washburn asked why there was no public opinion offensive against Andrew's government recently and asked if there was a timetable, Washburn thought that others didn't know. I know everything he did with the Dutch, and he wanted to have it both ways. Well, then I will help you. And Andrew, the Kingdom of the Netherlands behind the Dutch is currently very high profile. That's because the European powers have not yet formed a unified opinion, so the Netherlands will jump so high. If the French Empire, which is hostile to the Netherlands, and the Kingdom of Prussia behind me are willing to join forces against the Netherlands, then there is a great possibility that the Kingdom of the Netherlands will fall. I hope that Bismarck can quickly make up his mind to suppress the Netherlands. This time the Rothschild family's attack in North America is a good opportunity. If the Dutch are successfully contained by the Rothschild family and Bismarck attacks the Kingdom of the Netherlands, perhaps the Prussians can unexpectedly win the general election in the United States at the end of the year. The United States of America, the White House. James, Secretary of the Treasury of the United States of America, are you taking too much of a risk by doing this time? President Andrew received several distinguished guests in the White House manner. The White House is worthy of being the presidential palace of the United States. It is the residence of the most powerful person in the United States for hundreds of years. No one who comes here will not be a little restrained by its momentum. Even the Secretary of the Treasury James, who is already a member of the U.S. Cabinet, is no exception. This manor was originally built by Washington with the determination to be independent of the European powers, so European and American styles are mixed in it, but the national nature and beauty are compatible. Every time Andrew faces it, he will fall into deep thought. Not wanting to continue to entangle in it, Andrew said to James Speed, who was neatly dressed next to him. James Speed is the representative of the First City Bank Consortium in the government. Many of his positions are on the side of the First City Bank Consortium. This is a common phenomenon in the U.S. political arena. In the political arena, each cabinet member represents a force or consortium behind him, and they are the spokespersons of the major forces in the government. Just like Randy Blash, the head of the first consortium family in the United States, personally gave his Randy family a military uniform to become the Secretary of State. Looking at the group photo taken by President Lincoln's cabinet, Lincoln, who was sitting in the middle, and the people around him were also wearing bright clothes. But those who knew the situation knew that these people who seemed to be pleading for the people, with smiles on their faces, were actually competing for money in private to see who had the most background and influence. Of course, Andrew would not think that they were all vain people. After all, if they were like that, they would not directly use their money and their lives to support the founding of the Dutch or the United States. After all, if you are not careful, this matter of beheading is not a casual and fun thing, and the precedent of Lincoln's assassination happened not long ago. In the American political arena, no politician is simple. Even if they are in the same faction, they have different interests, so sometimes they will fight each other. Seward and Andrew, both Republicans, are the leaders among them. The two have been fighting almost since the establishment of the Lincoln cabinet government, but President Lincoln did not care at the beginning, because in Lincoln's view, a government with checks and balances can be managed more effectively. And as rumors say, Lincoln regarded these people as competitors of the president of the party from the beginning. These are all his enemies. Therefore, It is fun to put these potential enemies by his side and watch them fight. Andrew does not have the pattern of Lincoln, who has everything under control. He is more likely to place his confidants or spokespersons of major financial groups in power in exchange for his own interests. He hopes to increase his control over the U.S. government in this way. Although the Senate he controls has made him invincible. And the deal that the House of Representatives cooperates with his rule is also what he is most proud of. In the cabinet government, because it is the successor to President Lincoln's team, some positions will not be moved until after the new presidential election. It is not easy to do it casually at present. After all, it will cause major linkage consequences. Thinking of this, President Andrew thought of Amsterdam. He wondered what kind of help the Netherlands would provide to William IV in the face of the Rothschild family's attack on the United States. The Rothschild family is very powerful, and this time they are well prepared, and they will not give up until they achieve their goals. The Morgan family and the Rockefeller Consortium have unclear attitudes, and the British government seems to have clearly stood up to support the Rothschild family. I just don't know what the attitude of the governments of Paris, Berlin, Vienna and Naples is. It seems that a tough battle is going to be fought. Perhaps, as His Majesty William IV said, if this battle is won, the Kingdom of the Netherlands and the United States of America will truly stand firm in front of the 6 major European countries, and their status as major powers will be established. They will be safe and worry-free for the next 50 years. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.